Gather officially, we acknowledge the Darumba people. They have been custodians of this land for thousands of years and looking after earth, sea and community. And we pay respects to their elders past, present and emerging. And we acknowledge all Indigenous cultures within Livingstone. We don't have an opening prayer. That will be tomorrow morning, councillors. So we'll just get into the rest of the agenda. The attendance, we have a full attendance. And item 11.1 is the change of the ordinary meeting date for November 2023. This was communicated to you last week from the CEO. Given the size of the agenda, which is substantial, just shy of 2,000 pages, we thought we'd split the council meeting over 2 days. So starting this afternoon at 3 p.m, running through till 6, and tomorrow commencing at 9. But in order to do that, councillors, we need a resolution to endorse the actions of the Chief Executive Officer in doing that. Move, Councillor Friend. Can I get a seconder, please? Councillor Councillor Eastwood, beg your pardon. Councillor Friend, any discussion on that one?
No, thank you, Mr Mayor. I think you've explained it quite easily that we need this time to actually perform our duty and vote on all of the reports and notices of motion. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone voting against? Happy to go to the vote then, councillors? All in favour? Carried unanimously, thank you. No leave of absences or apologies. Item 4 is the confirmation of minutes of the previous meeting held on the 24th of October 2023. We will have a chance to read those, councillors. Happy to move, Councillor Mather. Thank you. Can I get a seconder? Councillor Friend. Thank you. No amendments, councillors? All right, we'll go to the vote on this one. Moved, Councillor Mather. Seconded, Councillor Friend. All in favour? Carried unanimously. Next item is item 5, councillors' declarations of interest on the agenda, and I have one at the moment. And I'm just going to read a brief statement. Councillors, I've recently been reminded that my second cousin and her husband own and operate Villa on the Beach at Cooey Bay. This arose in the context of whether I may have a declarable conflict of interest in relation to item 10.12 on the agenda and possibly 10.14. Firstly, second cousins are not defined as a related party. However, in the interest of transparency, I'm asking your view as to whether I do or do not have a declarable conflict of interest in any matters relating to Cooey Bay as a result of my second cousin living and owning a business there. The relationship is certainly not a close one, councillors. In the years that I owned a property at Cooey Bay, these relatives did not come to my house. There were no social interactions, no exchanging gifts at Christmas, and no birthday wishes were exchanged. I would occasionally see my cousin while walking my dog past their property, and I would occasionally see her whilst on the board of CQHHS, or Central Queensland Hospital Health Service, as she was employed by that service. Other than that, we simply didn't interact at all and don't. This is not to say there is an acrimonious relationship. We simply don't make contact and rarely see each other. As far as my wife's business is concerned, there's no relationship there either. Villa on the Beach does not engage Creative Cater for any of its functions. My understanding is that Villa on the Beach caters in-house or has preferred caterers, and Creative Cater is certainly not one of those. Consequently, I don't believe I have a declarable conflict of interest, and certainly don't believe that any decision I make at this table in relation to Cooey Bay will be affected by my second cousin living and operating a business there. I'm happy to answer any questions, but when it comes to the vote on this matter, I'll absent myself from the room.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I have a quick question in relation to second and third cousins. Even though via blood and you don't have unusually second and third cousins, it's a very close type of family unit that actually have anything to do with them. But second and third cousins, do they have to be noted on the related party interests?
No, they're not normally regarded as a related party, Councillor Friend.
Okay, thank you.
Seeing you've raised it, are we looking at a matter that's on the agenda that's going to be dealing with that premises?
No, councillor, just in relation to Kiwi Bay and the master plan, I think later on in the agenda.
Okay. No, I was wondering because I guess we just deal with those matters when they come up at the time.
We have the option of doing it
Yeah,
now
yeah,
under declarations of interest or at the time, councillor Mather. I'm doing it
Yeah.
now.
Yeah. Okay, and you say you're going to absent?
Pardon me?
You said you were going to absent at the
Yes.
time?
As
So
soon
we
as the-
don't
as soon as
need
you-
to have any more discussion then?
As soon as the questions have expired, I will leave
Yeah.
the room.
Yeah, okay. All right, thank you for that.
Thank you. I have another question, Mr Mayor. Why should you absent when you're not close to these parties and you can't help who your cousins and distant cousins are?
No, it's a choice I make. Ultimately, I could stay in the room and ask the councillor's permission to do that, but for me, I just prefer to leave the room, ultimately.
Sure. And one last question, Mr Mayor. You no longer own any property in Kiwi Bay?
No, I don't.
Thank you.
Done, councillor? Councillor Watson?
Yes, question just with councillors Eastwood and Bellow. Their houses are actually in this map. Would they have a declarable interest, conflict of interest in this case?
Well, the only thing I can do is go back to.
I think he was
Sorry.
asking the CEO or the Mayor.
Not the CEO. Sorry, it's just that I'm just thinking about in my relationship with Great Keppel Island, I have a conflict of interest there simply because my parents own a house there. And so I'm thinking this is a very similar thing, so I'm just wondering if that's the case.
Well, I think there's probably two matters here. One is mine and the other one relates to councillor Bellow and councillor Eastwood. So if there's no more questions on mine, I'm going to leave, but ultimately he can sort out with the good councillors.
Are you assuming the chair for the vote on whether or not councillor Locke has a declarable conflict of interest in the matter?
I thought we chose the route rather than what vote. I would support the vote.
Just while the vote on whether he had, on determining whether or not he has a declarable interest.
So didn't he just say, I mean, unless I missed something, that he was going to leave anyway?
I'm a bit confused on that.
Well, I just wondered why he left the room.
Mr
I
CEO,
thought he
am
was
I
going
correct
to-
in saying that the Mayor's left the room so that the rest of us as councillors can vote to see whether we believe he has any conflict of interest in this matter? Thank you.
Okay, councillors, we have a matter to resolve, whether we believe the Mayor has an interest that, I'll just refer to this sheet here, undeclarable conflicts of interest may include interest where a reasonable person might think you could not be impartial. That's perhaps the most accurate one that I can see correlates with the Mayor's disclosure. Mr CEO, whether you'd have anything further to add to that or not?
Not particularly, Mr Acting Chair. I think the Mayor has outlined what he believes the relationship to be. He's contended that he doesn't believe that he's conflicted, but recognises that that's a matter for his colleagues to determine.
Yep. Okay.
Mr Skid, through you, Mr Chair, do
Yes.
we need do we need to second this, or is it a procedural motion?
Basically just find out what the majority think ultimately, I guess.
Okay, and so can we speak for it or against it?
I believe there's nothing for him to say. No.
All right.
Would you like to move or speak on the matter, councillor Freeman?
Thank you. I'll speak on the matter. Thank you, Mr
Certainly.
Chairman.
Mm.
I believe that from what the Mayor has described as a second cousin, and then with perhaps any children makes them their third cousin, and he quite clearly stated that they had not had anything to do with each other. It's purely just through the bloodlines of family and nothing more, that they don't associate with each other, they don't have dinner together, they don't really share in any part of their lives together. And I don't believe he has a conflict at this stage.
Excellent. Anybody else want to contribute one way or the other? If not, we'll ask the table of those who'd like permit the Mayor to be able to stay in for the debate on item in relation to the Kiwi Master Plan. Raise your hand now.
Mr Chairman, I'd just like to say,
Yes, councillor Maiden.
I can understand where conflict poses a big cloud in certain circumstances. And while we are loyal to our colleagues, we must place ourselves above that when in doubt. And I always walk out. And there were probably occasions where I feel I could have argued and stopped because there's some big issues out there. But whether it's your first or your second cousin, I think it's a pub test. You know, that's what we have to look at, perception. And unfortunately, they're the penalties for being related. I mean, you may not, but if I had a third or fourth cousin, I wouldn't hesitate. I may not have even had a Christmas card for 20 years. So sadly enough, I think
if you don't have to declare it on your,
no.
for me, if you don't have to declare it on your declaration, then I'm quite happy. Yeah.
Okay. Righto.
Well, that's why I asked.
Yep.
What are we dealing with? We're not dealing with anything except conflict. But there's no particular matter that we're dealing with at this moment to make that stand.
Yep, and just to ratify that the motion, Councillor Daniel Park Master Plan, okay. Okay, well, councillors, hands up who would like the mayor to be able to stay in? Stay out?
With sympathy.
Yep, excellent, there we go, matter is resolved. Thank you, Mr CEO.
Through the chair, are we still looking at the matter with Eastwood and Councillor Eastwood and Bello?
If you wish to have that dealt with now, Councillor Watson.
It's just that I know that myself with Great Keppel Island, and I've been leaving the room for 3 years. I'm just thinking their houses are actually on this map that we're talking about, and I just don't want them to get in trouble if something happens down the track.
You can certainly answer questions, Councillor Eastwood, yes.
All I can say on that is that back in the old council, we had discussions in relation to that, and I actually brought it up, and because we didn't have, well, I can only speak for myself, because I didn't have, there was nothing I could gain or lose more than anybody else within that community, that I was able to stay in the room and vote and attend matters at the Kui Bay Master Plan, you know, all that sort of stuff. And it wasn't until, if you remember, when there was going to be a roadway change, when that possibly could have affected myself or Councillor Bello, that we decided to leave the room, because that would have had a positive or negative effect upon us. Yeah.
Councillor Friend?
Mr Mayor, I just have a question in relation to the master plan that we're going to be speaking of and the changes to the master plan. Surely the master plan itself, once eventually implemented, would actually then give a benefit to the whole of the Kui Bay community, where Councillor Bello and Councillor Eastwood own homes. And I remember quite clearly that at the time you owned a home there, you no longer own a home there, and you also left the room, as did Councillor Bello and Councillor Eastwood earlier within this tenure in discussing that. So I'm wondering how things have changed, and I take good Councillor Watson's point that he's had to leave the room over situations when he owned a home at Bangalee, and he had to leave the room for Great Keppel Island or Whopper in relation to his father, who owns a home there. He doesn't personally own a home, so I can't see the difference in that.
Any comment from either of the two councillors?
Well, I think that when we left the room on that occasion was to do with the roadway, is my recollection. Well, I'm actually happy if you don't have a vote on it, and I'll do whatever you like. I'm not going to dig my heels in because it'll make no difference to me. So I'm actually happy to have the vote.
Can I just ask a question? With this initial plan that was drawn some time ago, Gregory Street was going to be upgraded by the looks of it and everything else. Is that still on the cards at this stage until we take it back to the public or go to briefings and things like that? Mr. CEO?
Mr Mayor, if I turn councillors' attention to the matter that is being considered today, and I think Councillor Mather rightly pointed out that it is about the subject matter that's on the council agenda today, and this talks about the shape or scope of the consultation process that might inform this. I have given advice previously to Councillor Eastwood that I didn't believe that he was conflicted by those broader discussions around planning, but when it came to implementing funding, that he might, depending on what the outcomes of all of those things, it might have something to declare at that time. That would be my advice, but I don't get a vote on the matter. Ultimately, it's up to each of the councillors to put their point of view, and then for their colleagues to consider whether they believe, because you are the sample of the reasonable person, whether or not you believe they do or do not have the conflict as defined.
Councillor Mather?
If I remember rightly, if I remember rightly, when we discussed this earlier, and somebody might like to correct me, we were talking about whether Matthew Flinders along the Kiwi Bay beach was going to be either single lane or double lane. And we were looking at the impact on the surrounding roads like Cathney, Davidson, and if we were to have it one way, it would have diverted traffic around there and probably through Gregory Street, and that's where the impact would have been. And that's what the focus of the argument was at that time. Who will be affected? Which way would they go? If we had a two-way, where would they go? They'd take the whole Matthew Flinders Drive back out to the highway. But if we had one lane closed, then if people wanted to come back or come the short way, they'd take one of these side streets. And Gregory Street was very much in the take as far as thoughts go. And that's why the officers, the two members, I would think, left the room at the time, because it would have been forced past their doors. But now, looking at this map here, the properties of the two members are not within the identified circle of the Kiwi Bay precinct. They're outside of that grey line, unless someone can correct me.
Well, I think both of them are in that, aren't they?
The grey line. Gregory Street,
Yep.
down to the Kiwi Bay corner there, up Matthew Flinders. Yeah, the road. It shows all the properties inside what is identified on this map, the Kiwi Bay precinct. And the properties of the councillors are outside of that scope.
I'm sorry, Councillor Mayor, but the houses actually, they have to use that road to get off, so it is a joint.
Yeah, it is. There's a common ground there. Yes. No, I'm just making an observation, that's all.
Happy to contribute. If,
Councillor Bello?
permission from the chair there. I think in terms of consistency, even a month ago when we put our hands up in relation to the Kiwi Bay Master Plan at that stage to reconsider, and I recognise that it's probably frustrating to be reconsidering this, I acknowledge that, but there was no concerns about conflict back then that were raised, and both Councillor Eastwood and myself contributed to the vote, and our votes are recorded in the minutes, which we've just which we've just ratified, and the only time there had previously been the requirement to declare an interest, which we certainly did, was when there was going to be the possibility of improving traffic on Gregory Street by either one-way or two-way. So I'll be happy to do the will of the table in relation to this matter. And I guess the only other question I guess I might have is, how far does it extend? Is Councillor Friend, if I asked you what locality do you live in, is that the locality of Yeppoon, or is it Adelaide Park Road, or I'm not sure.
Thank you. Is that a question to me?
Yes.
Yes. So I would answer that. And along with thousands of others, it is the locality of Yeppoon. However, when we're looking at particular roads, if something was to happen to perhaps Power Street or Lamberton Street or something within my vicinity or along my boundary, then I certainly would declare. And I understand what you're saying. However, I think that it's quite a long bow in relation to talking about a Cooey Bay master plan, as we're not talking about a Yeppoon master plan. And I think it's quite a long bow that you're suggesting at this time. But if the CEO, and so I can clarify, Mr. CEO, you've said that we're talking about the engagement of the plan, not the actual plan. Is that correct?
Mr Chairman, I'm just reading the proposal. It is item 10.12, that an acknowledgement of the significant amount of community consultation and council resources already invested in the Cooey Bay master planning process over a period of years. Council moved forward in line with 2021 report, which identified green space adjacent to Daniel Park and not 4-storey units. My commentary on that was, given the resolution that was passed last month to proceed with refreshed engagement, depending on the outcome of that motion, that would inform that refreshed engagement and would either lock that piece in as a not negotiable or not. So the issue itself is about shaping the refreshed engagement plan that was resolved last month. That's the issue that's been considered, and whether or not councillors have a conflict on that matter alone, sure, as distinct from, as we say, determining where roads go or where the investment might go and the like. That's been my advice to Councillor Eastwood in the past.
Okay, thank you.
And if I can just add to that, like whether it's been zebra crossings down the front there, in front of the park, there's been no issue with conflict before, and I've actually been given the go ahead, even from the previous council too. So that's why I've never left the room, because there's never been an indication from the table. But like I've said before, I'm happy for you guys to decide and make it clear one way or another forever. The only thing that brings to mind, I actually have a Lammermoor, and we just need to be really careful, because like down at Lammermoor where the outriggers are, how far is too far? You know, like does that potentially lock me off from all the way from Kent Beach to Yeppoon? You know what I mean? Like, so that's just a point. Just a point I'd just like to make in relation to that. Yeah.
Right. Well, councillors, I guess, gentlemen, are you seeking approval to stay in the room for the vote, or what would you like to do?
I'm happy to leave the room, Mr Chair, and allow the councillors
Yeah.
to make their judgment.
All right. Thank you.
Do you think this is one that could set precedent? That would give us a bit of an indication, as was asked. What is the boundary? How far is too far? Or how far is not far enough? Should, for our own benefit here, have that sort of,
It's a great point, Councillor Mather, and I take it on board. I guess there's a couple of decisions or thoughts we need to consider here, councillors. One is, I suppose, historically what's happened to Councillor Watson in terms of Great Keppel Island, and I'm conscious of Councillor Eastwood's argument about Lammermoor. I mean, where does Lammermoor start and finish? Where does Cooey Bay start and finish? Well, it seems that we've been fairly rigid with Councillor Watson in saying anything to do with Great Keppel Island, he's out of the room. And the other issue is we need to consider, I suppose, is, and this isn't really malicious against Councillor Eastwood or Councillor Bello. In essence, in raising the topic, I'm sure Councillor Watson is concerned for their best interests, because the last thing anyone wants is another OIA referral. There's been enough of those. So ultimately it's about, do you think that in them being in the room for a vote on the QE Bay Master Plan engagement process, they are potentially going to get some sort of benefit out of that? Councillor Watson.
Through the chair, it just, my concern is this road goes directly past their home. That's why I'm worried about Ludmore Beach. I look at it as he's right at the other end of the road, but this goes straight past their house, and it could affect things in the future. And I know I've been accused of stuff with Keppel myself, so that, and I don't mean at the table, outside, and I just wouldn't like to see that happening everywhere else.
Yeah, thank you. And I guess we potentially haven't been overly consistent when it comes to QE Bay and whether Councillor Eastwood and Councillor Bello remain in the room in the past. And I guess you're right, Councillor Mather, this will be a defining one, I guess.
I think perhaps for our own council benefit, we perhaps need to get some professional advice on that to say how far is too far or too close. And it's not a matter of, is it, are you going to derive any benefit, or are you going to have any adverse reaction or great benefit or whatever? I think it's perception too, reputational damage could be in there as well.
And I guess, again, it's a very good point, but you can go out and get, I suppose, all the legal advice that you want. At the end of the day, the lawyers are going to say to you, but the final decision is up to the council table, which is like then up to each of the council's perceptions, I suppose, as to whether they think there's a conflict there or not.
You know what I think, Mr. Mayor? I think we all perhaps overly indulge in erring, because we're sick and tired of OIAs.
Yeah.
I think really what it boils down to. You think, well, I'll take the chance, because you might really have a good contribution to make, but at the same time you think, well, no, I'm not going to take the chance and lose that valuable information, simply because, you know, somebody just as likely to put things.
And this is what I've been saying since I got into council. I'm the one that's probably most likely to know more about Keppel than anyone else, because I've been there 30 years, you know, and I'm unable to speak about it.
All right. Any other comments or questions, councillors? All right. Well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we're going to go to the vote, councillors. Those who believe that... Sorry, one at a time, yeah. Councillor Friend.
I'm concerned that this may result in further OIAs, and we don't want any more. We had enough in 2021, and I will vote that they leave the room.
All right. So essentially then, I guess the premise of that is that anything to do with QE Bay in the future, Councillor Bello and Councillor Eastwood are out of the room. Is that essentially what we're saying? That's...
So I only think it is in this case because it goes past the house, not necessarily because it's all of QE Bay.
That's why we need to get a clearing on how far is too far. It is difficult.
I know it is. I guess my question is, how do you do that? How do you do that?
I mean, again, I had the same issue with Bangalee. I lived in Kiama Avenue, and yes, I used the boat ramp, but I wasn't allowed to have anything to do with that either.
Yeah.
And again, I'm the one that lived there for 20 years, and I was unable to have any contribution to what people are going through there.
All right, thank you. Councillor Mather, your view?
I'm inclined to think that they should abstain, because yes, they are on the boundary of the line that defines QE Bay Precinct. And I wouldn't like to give them, yes, the word's not unfair advantage, because there is no advantage there. We are the losers if they have the knowledge of that area, like you with the boat ramp or Great Keppel. And we lose good debate, we lose good information as a result of it. I will err on the side of caution, Mr. Mayor,
Okay, so you're saying they should stay out?
I think until such time as we get further advice, I'd like to see us get some advice on that. Yes, I'd say stay out for the time being, yes,
That's all right.
and get some advice on that. Because we can always go back and revise that, that feeling. And the same with you. I think we need to roll them in together. Because we do want to get it right.
Councillor Watson, thank you, Councillor Mather.
As Councillor Mather is saying, it's at her on, you know, I think we should leave them out for now, but revisit it at a later date. As I said before, you know, for the last 3 years, almost 3 years, I've not been able to have any contribution to the island when my family's been there 30 years, you know, and the same with Bengali. You know, we're missing out on information that could help the debate and find a better outcome.
So you're saying they should stay out, but we should concur with Councillor Mather's view that we seek further advice. Okay. Right. Councillor Swadling.
Yes, it puts us in a predicament because local knowledge is gold, in particular in those areas. However, I have to agree as well with the colleagues here in this until we get some clear clarity. I think they should stay out.
All right, thank you. Well, it's a fairly clear view, I think, from around the room, so I will concur with the majority. Mr. CEO? Yes, right. So the consensus, well, I thought we actually just did, but anyway,
Just for each individual, that's also
yeah, for the record. So those in favour of Councillor Eastwood and Councillor Bello remaining out for the discussion on the Kiwi Bay Master Plan, all in favour? Carried. Okay, thank you. Go and find them.
It's just stupid. The rulings are stupid.
So it's the High Court decision. You got 300 votes for a ankles on.
Yeah. We'll have a,
decision is made by council. Careful, Watson, if it's a stupid decision.
No, I mean
Yeah.
the decision about people having the knowledge to not be able to share it at the table. That's what I'm getting
That
at.
you think that would be reflected in the council's vote?
No, but it's protecting us at the same time. That's what I'm getting. Yeah, sorry, that's what I'm thinking about, it's protecting us, yeah.
In the interest of getting the advice that councillor Jason, I might talk to you after the meeting.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
well, Councillor Bello and Councillor Eastwood, I don't know whether you're watching on the screen outside, but ultimately the decision is that for this particular matter, you are requested to stay outside of the room, but I want to seek further advice because this is all just very, very messy. I mean, we took on board Councillor Eastwood's comments, where does Lammermoor start and finish, where does Kiwi Bay start and finish? And of course, for the last 3 years, Councillor Watson's been excluded from the room in terms of Great Keppel Island or Bengali. So we want to try and nail down some advice as to where jurisdictions and where your level of influence, if that's the right phraseology, extends, and try and get some direction around that because it's very muddy. And then as Councillor Mather correctly says, I think we're all at a point now where everyone's petrified of getting referred to the OIA on different matters. So the decision was made more for your protection at this point in time than anything else. So.
Sorry, Mr Mayor.
And we haven't been consistent. We did acknowledge that too.
And we've been getting permission right from like the whole time I've been in council, so that's 6 years. And I think there's a big difference between Kiwi Bay and, for example, Great Keppel Island, where there's power, there's a whole toilet system, there's a whole lot of other stuff that's involved with that compared to,
Well, that might be debatable, but ultimately, there are sections of Great Keppel Island too. Yeah. So Councillor Watson's parents' place is right down the southern end. I mean, is that influenced by what's going to happen on the northern side? You know?
Or even exclude the knowledge that we should have. Mr Mayor, well, and I think it is tabled, we need a resolution at some stage today to have a look and get some professional advice on this. And I'd like to to throw in Councillor Watson's and your matter as well, because they asked to agree. And like I said, we don't want people to get into trouble, but we do want to give them the opportunity to have contribution if they're not hindered by legislation. So I'd like to see that, those three matters.
See, I see with the grey areas that my portfolio is tourism, and our biggest tourism thing is Great Keppel Island, and I can't speak on it.
All right, councillors, thank you. We'll move forward to item 6, I believe, Mr. CEO, we're up to.
That's correct. Just through a quirk of the numbering, it is part 6 and item 7.1.
Yeah.
Through a quirk of the numbering.
Business outstanding, table for ordinary council meetings. Councillors, as we normally do with this, we'll deal with it by exception. So are there any matters that are outstanding that you would like to raise and ask the officers? Councillor Friend.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Number 1 is about the local law review. Just an update. So will this be tabled in the December meeting, perhaps?
I'll take it on notice. Councillor Friend will get an answer for you by end of proceedings today.
Thank you. Number 7. Just getting to it. My computer. Kedron Park, I just would like to make a statement. Well done to all involved with the drainage at Kedron Park, and in particular the mowing and keeping the vermin away from the residential houses. That was awesome.
Councillor Friend, sorry to interrupt you. Can
Yes.
I also add to that and
Yes.
just pass, I think, our collective compliments to the Open Spaces team for the work at Emu Park near the Bicentennial Park, where all that swamp country's been cleared. So, Mr. General Manager, if you wouldn't mind passing that on to your team. That's good. Thank you, Councillor Friend. Sorry for that.
Thank you, that's okay. My laptop has decided not to work and I have blank pages. So,
Is our internet working? Because I don't have connection. I'm using Wi-Fi, actual internet. I don't see any Wi-Fi.
So I've just
All right,
tried
well,
connecting it. to
Have your
just-
computer looked at Councillor Watson and Councillor
Let's
Friend?
see, I'm going.
Councillor Friend, we might come back to you if that's all right.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Councillors, any other questions in relation to matters outstanding?
8, 9, 10 are all in the agenda today, Mr. Mayor.
Sorry, which reference, Councillor Mather?
8, 9, 10, they're all in the agenda today.
Yes.
Surplus Stadium Clubhouse, is that in today? I don't think so. 11.
That's item 11.
Yes. I don't think it's on the agenda, I don't think.
No deputation scheduled for December 5.
Yeah, that's under, Margaret Beach as well, in the agenda.
Yes.
13's in the agenda. 14's in the agenda. And you know, we're in business in them.
Are we organising a site visit, Councillor Mather?
Yes, yes. 16's been dealt with. Marlborough Depot Resourcing is in the agenda, and that's the end of it.
Yes. So it should clean a bit of it up this meeting, Councillor Mather.
It's been hard work.
Councillor Friend, are we back?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am back. Thank you. So this leaves me in a bit of a predicament because I just wanted to ask a question about number 13, which is the Quebec Master Plan. So where does that leave us all now with a question in relation to that? Is that an issue? Or
Mr. Chairman, I guess it depends on the question. Because as I said, it's about the subject matter, not
yes,
the broad issue. They're not blanket rulings.
yes,
They're matter by matter.
right.
So if it's just a question, Councillor Friend.
No, I'll leave that. I'll leave
Right.
it. Number 15, the naming of wetland off Bottlebrush Drive in relation to should it be Kedron Wetland, Kedron Park. It was laid on the table at the last meeting in relation to finding out more information of what exactly is a wetland, what type of biodiversity, what type of wildlife actually inhabit there, and I was just wondering how far away are we with that information?
We'll take that one on notice as well, Mr Chairman, try and get an answer by close of business.
Thank you very much. That's all.
Okay. Any other questions, queries or comments, councillors? Moved Councillor Mather, thank you. Seconded Councillor Friend. Sorry, Councillor Swaley. All right, so we're happy to go to the vote, councillors? All in favour? Carried unanimously, thank you. 7.2 is lifting matters off the table, and we have 3 of those. That is in relation to the notice of motion from Councillor Bello relating to the Farnborough Beach Draft Master Plan, notice of motion from myself in relation to Kiwi Bay Gardens fence, and from Councillor Friend in relation to the Byfield Footpaths Forward Works. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Move Councillor Friend, seconded Councillor Swadling. All in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. No petitions in item 7, no councillor delegate reports in item 8. Item 9, and our numbering skew whiff again, Mr CEO. 10.1, notice of motion from Councillor Mather in relation to the Marlborough Queensland Police suggestions. Councillor Mather, would you like to speak to this one?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just one of my trips up north, bumped into the policeman this day and he wanted to raise a number of issues and said, hop in the car, I'll show you. So that's how this arrived, Mr Mayor. And it's just a tidy up because he notices inconsistencies like we do from time to time. And he actually said, I'll send you some dot points to confirm. So, and I advised that I would bring them to the table for the endorsement of the table and the reference from the officers to communicate with him and TMR. So even though I've read the, I'll move the motion, Mr Mayor, if I could get a seconder. I'll go into the background a little bit. That the attached correspondence from the officer in charge of the Marlborough Police identifying the need to urgently address safety issues in the town and surrounds be received, and item 4 be referred to TMR for review and approval, and Officer Franklin be thanked for his suggestions and duly updated with a response.
Thank you, Councillor Mather. I'm happy to second.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. As I said, Mr Mayor, he's new eyes in this community. He's from Wandowan, one of those western towns. So what he sees is what we've been looking at for a very long time, which we probably identify as fairly normal. But he has raised a number of issues in relation to speed signs, and that's important that everybody knows where they're going at what speed, because there are so many hundred people in town and going through on the highway that we need to be consistent and clear in our directions. I noticed the officer's report makes mention of the highway signage are all done in accordance with a system in a book, and we know that. But what we've got are 2 entrances into the town, and the long and short of it is that unless we extend those distances before they reduce speed, they're on the intersection before they know it. And that's what he was saying. So if the officers feel that it's okay just to say, well, look, it refers to a book, it's important that the officer be referred to Main Roads personally so that he can explain to them the difficulties he had in leaving the signage the way it is. And the rest is very simple to understand, Mr Mayor. That's the main one because, like I said, he's a man with a human touch, common sense, a big heart, and I think he'll be good for the town because everybody loves him up there.
Thank you, Councillor Mather. Mr CEO, can I suggest that when we do the minutes for this particular item, we include the 5 points raised by the good officer in the recommendation, please? just so for transparency, anyone reading within the community, reading the recommendation, they'll understand what it's all about.
I'm sure we can do that, Mr Chairman.
Thank you.
Yes,
Okay.
I think whoever he's speaking to, an on-site, that triangle at the entrance of the Marlborough Township, you really need it on site to understand what he's talking about, because everybody has right of way, which means nobody knows where they're going. That's what it means. So they need to be on site to understand it. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Anyone, any questions of Councillor Mather on this one? Councillor Watson?
I'd just like to state that Keppel Sands is 40k all the way through the whole township. And I can't see any reason why you can't do a similar thing with Marlborough.
Thank you.
If there's precedent been set, Mr. Mayor, I'm sure the good officer will take it up.
All right. Any other comments, councillors? Are you happy to go to the vote on this one?
I might just make a quick comment, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
I think that the officers, as in our officers, have answered the questions quite well. And I'm actually opposed to a 40k speed limit within a town zone, and the reason being is 50k is pretty much throughout Australia now. And I remember I can't remember his name, but he's a famous race car driver, stated that when you have different speed limits all over the place, people get really confused. Whereas if they know that if there's a particular limit within this zone is going to be that, then they can't get caught out, and it becomes actually much safer. And you'll find that in Europe, that's what happens. You don't have, 90 k's here, 100 k's here. They're not like that. And I think that we need to be particularly consistent. And so that's probably the only comment I want to make, just in relation to the speed limit within the town, Mr. Mayor. I think the other stuff's absolute.
Thank you. All right, councillors, in support of this, I'd just like to, first of all, commend Councillor Mather for bringing it to the table, but also the officers and their willingness to liaise with the good officer up there, because they pointed out in the report what some of the obstacles might be, and agreeing to all of his requests. But certainly, thank you to Michael and his team for being flexible around this and being prepared to discuss it with the good officer, and I'm sure we'll end up with an outcome that everyone can live with. All right. Are we happy to wrap up debate, councillors? All right. Got a move of Councillor Mather, second of myself. All in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 10.2 is a notice of motion from Councillor Friend in relation to cashless landfill. Councillor Friend, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move this, obviously. I'd like to thank the officers for answering the questions given this notice of motion. It's important that we understand and have a timeline.
We might actually, get a seconder before we go into debate, Councillor. Second, Councillor Swadling, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Councillor Swadling. For the people who may be watching on live stream, this was an operational decision. It was not a resolution at the council table to turn the landfill and transfer stations cashless. This was because there were 6 break-ins in 2023. Some break-ins just caused a lot of damage. Others, money was taken. And we found that the councillors, all council at this table, have been notified 6 times prior to this actually becoming cashless. We certainly know that there's a lot of talk out in the community in relation to this cashless these transactions that are cashless. I was recently, only last week, at a Lawmac conference and spoke to Isaac Regional Council, and they have gone cashless. And they said that they haven't had a great deal of complaints. There was certainly some angst amongst the community, but they find that it's a safer working environment for the officers working at these areas. And also, once the community are aware of it and it becomes the norm, they said that they found it to be a positive experience all round. I'm just letting you know what I've learnt. But I do have a couple of questions, if with leave of the table, of the officers, if I may. So, First and foremost, I suppose I will ask, I see in the report that there is a survey that the contractors of Outlook for the landfill and the transfer stations are undertaking with those that use the landfill. And I just want to ask some questions of the survey. Do I?
Yep, so
Just-
perhaps we get an officer at the table, Mr CEO.
Yeah, sure. Ask away, councillor friend.
Thank you, thank you.
Chris will answer what he can.
So this particular survey, what is the intention of it to begin with?
Welcome to the table, Mr Hocking.
Thank you, through the chair. The survey's being undertaken by Outlook, and it's really looking at their own performance as number one. They've also included what feedback the residents that are using the facilities coming in and their thoughts on using cashless or going cash at the sites.
Thank you. Mr Hocking, do we have any preliminary results from this survey as yet to share?
Not at this moment.
And when is this survey going to be concluded?
It should be around the beginning of December.
Lovely. Righto. Mr Mayor, although I've put this notice of motion forward, I'm going to ask, under the guise, and I use that word quite loosely, of engagement with the community, that we should make decisions once we have engaged with the community in the transparency of this council. And I'd like to make a procedural motion to lay this on the table pending the results of the survey undertaken by Outlook and to be tabled at the December ordinary meeting. So I make that procedural motion to lay this on the table until the December meeting so that we have those results and we have a definitive overview of what the public think.
All right, thank you. Any questions of councillor Friend before we go to the vote on this one, councillors? All right, so you all right, your comments noted, councillor. Yep.
Yeah. Could you put
So did you want Mr Hocking to explain the survey again, councillor?
Just in a nutshell, if you wouldn't mind, thank you.
Right.
So as Outlook are our suppliers on site or our contractors on site, they're interested in what the general public thinks of their own performance on site. Along with that, they're asking about their thoughts on, cashless going through into the landfills or into the transfer stations as well.
I think the complaints have shown us that they're not happy, so I don't know if Outlook could bring us any more information. And I know we've got a procedural on the table, Mr Mayor. I'm just wondering why we haven't thought about a caretaker for these areas. Because I was astounded when I saw all the material that they're taking. I mean, all the thefts that were going on. They're not there just after money. They're anything that moves, they'll take by the sound of it, because it can be offloaded. Why don't we have a caretaker with a dog?
It'll be the January meeting before. Whereas if
I, for one, wouldn't like to live at a tip.
Oh, I don't know.
including the survey results.
You might be a bit surprised.
Before December.
If this gets passed today, the report will include
I'd go there for 3 months without pay.
Okay.
'Cause I know-
Councillor, it's just a point of clarification from the CEO. If Councillor if Councillor Friend's procedural motion is successful, it probably won't come back to the table until January, you're saying, Mr CEO?
Too far away.
Mr Mayor, so if this motion lays on the table in its current form, which calls for a report, that motion calling for a report would be considered at the December meeting, therefore the report would come at the January meeting. I was suggesting to the Mayor that not proceed with the procedural motion, pass this motion, and the report that comes in December that's called for today can include the survey results if and when they're available and some basic analysis of those things.
Thank you, Mr Mayor and Mr CEO. I appreciate that. I look forward to the survey results in December. I think it's really important that we make informative decisions at this table on the basis of an overall view of the majority of the people that use the landfill and also transfer stations. So I retract the procedural motion and happy to go with this report and look forward to the survey results in the December meeting. I think it's important that we look at it as a whole, understanding what's caused this in the first place, and also my concern is for the safety of staff at this time. So I think I'd like to see it dealt with before Christmas. That's the Christmas shutdown through council, and I think that's the most important thing, that it is dealt with. But I'm really wanting to see those results in December.
Okay, on the assumption this gets approved, Councillor Friend.
Right.
Yeah. All right. So any other questions, councillors? All right. So we've got a mover and Councillor Friend. You've spoken to this. Anyone speaking against? Councillor Bello.
The only reason I'll be speaking against is I'm looking forward to moving a motion later on in the meeting that calls for cash to be reinstated. So in supporting this, that would be contrary to that. So I'll be voting against this one.
All right, thank you. Anyone else speaking for?
Mr Mayor, I'll support this, but I'd like to think that as an alternative or as a complement to what we're already doing, and we seem to have tried everything and lost on everything, we should consider alternatives as in a caretaker. Because, I mean, I'm talking about one for every tip. Because we are changing. We have to change our ways and think outside the box, because we're just going to be right for the pickings for a long time if we don't.
Sorry, councillors, my computer's just died. There we go. Councillor Watson.
Mr Hocking, I couldn't think of your first name, sorry. When I was reading the report, there was a few times when there'd been theft of cash on site. I would have thought we had some sort of policy to remove the cash at the end of each day or something. Because that obviously sort of sorts some of those issues, you know?
From what I understand, there's currently not one at the moment, or there wasn't one at the time when the cash was kept on site, so a float and the daily takings. You know, obviously towards the end of the week when the dollars built up, you know, money was removed from site, but not on a nightly basis. It's a very expensive undertaking to send, you know, security guards around to pick up all the money, you know, from these sites.
All right.
You need to have a security guard. Sorry?
Or a security guard or some mechanism to get the money back to the
I mean, would you do daily takings or you do weekly? Would you wait for a week to remove it all?
oh, typically probably a week.
I think depending on how much is involved, but I do know that the items that are being taken, constantly being taken from all of the sites, it's substantial. And insurance agents will be looking at us and asking us what we're doing differently to be able to prevent this.
All right. Thank you, Councillor Mather. Just taking your question on board in relation to future caretakers, Councillor Mather, I think you might refer that one to the officers just for some work in the background rather than putting it as part of the resolution. But ultimately they can do some investigation around that. I can't help but think that would be a potentially costly exercise. But anyway, they'll come. It is costly not to do anything. I agree. Anyone speaking for? Yep. We happy to wrap up debate and go to Councillor Friend to wrap up? All right. Councillor Friend.
Thank you, Mr Mayor and councillors. I really appreciate, first and foremost, what the officers are trying to do. They're trying to find an alternative to dissuade people to actually break in looking for cash. And as we know, crime and juvenile crime is amongst one of the major issues we're having within our shire. That, of course, is a state matter. How do we actually change this? Well, this is what the officers were trying to implement change by taking away the cash. Now, I also use cash in my everyday life, along with my cards. However, this is becoming more frequent, as we've seen, so I would just enjoy waiting for that survey to come back and look forward to the results in December, in the December meeting, to make an informative decision of what the actual community really thinks of it. I take Councillor Mather's point as well, and thank her for it, that, we need to look at this as a whole. I understand that a caretaker was an alternative, but we'd need to then look at what else can we do. Do we need an education officer in waste as well? And that's also very important. So I commend this to the table, and I thank the officers for the report. And I also remind councillors that we were notified 6 times of this before it was actually implemented. And I don't believe that there was any conflict or any issues at this point. And again, as the portfolio holder for waste, I was given 2 emails by the public for the Caves transfer station in relation to their concern about going cashless, but I have received no more. This is why I'm interested in the survey results.
Thank you, Councillor Friend. All right, we've wrapped up debate, councillors. We've got a move of Councillor Friend, seconded Councillor Swadling. Those in favour? Those against? Motion is carried. 10.3, Councillor Mather, in relation to infringement notices. There's a range of questions from Councillor Mather in relation to this one, councillors. So the recommendation is that the questions on notice be received. Councillor Mather, do you want to speak to the report?
The notice of motion, Mr Mayor. I'm just trying to find where it stops and starts, because officers...
Would you like me to read them out, councillor?
I'm just trying to find a page. Vehicles on beaches. No, it's been duplicated, Mr Mayor.
Okay, so I'll read them out if you like, Councillor Mather.
Yeah, if you like, Mr Mayor, thank you.
1, how many infringement notices have been issued for driving on our various beaches from the 1st of June 2023 to the 20th of October 2023, or nearest end date? Secondly, what is the current value of the infringement notice for this offence? Thirdly, has there ever been a challenge to the notice or notices of this nature? If so, how many? 4, has there ever been a finding by a court for this alleged offence? If so, what were the circumstances?
Yes, Mr Mayor.
We might just get a mover in a second, Councillor Mather, if that's okay.
That they be
You're moving?
They
You're
be
moving?
received. I'm just looking for the answers, Mr Mayor. They're the questions.
Yep. We're just receiving the questions, councillor. The officers are yet to respond.
Yes, Mr Mayor. And I think you can't really make a debate unless you have got the answers.
Clearly, so all we're doing is voting to receive your questions today and pass them on to the officers.
And this matter be held over to the December meeting when the answers should be available. Mr Mayor, if we could do that.
We can put that time frame on it, Mr CEO.
Indeed, Mr Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Councillor.
And I also have a question.
Councillor Friend.
I suppose my question is not to Councillor Mather, but to the officers. Is there any legal issues preventing us or yourselves to answering question 4 in relation to findings by a court?
Mr Chairman, the answer is no. Most court information is publicly available. If there's anything that we can't provide publicly, we would provide that to councillors out of session, as we normally do. No, there's nothing obvious that would preclude us from sharing that information with councillors publicly and or privately.
Thank you.
Mr Mayor, I would like to make a comment if I can.
Please do.
I was actually very excited, officers, when I saw the officers' recommendation, particularly in regard to vehicles driving on beaches.
That's the next one.
That's the next one.
Yep.
I'm still excited.
So we're just receiving these questions at the moment, councillors. So we've got a mover in Councillor Mather, seconded Councillor Friend. Happy to go to the vote. All in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. All right. 10.4, we can go back to the excited Councillor Eastwood in a minute.
Anything to excite him, Mr Mayor. Yes, Mr Mayor, I noticed the officer's recommendation at the bottom, but I would like to actually read my recommendation first, my motion, and I'd be quite happy to discuss the officer's recommendation as well. And I'd like to move that due to unprecedented number of infringement notices issued to persons allegedly driving on beaches under council's control, and a subsequent deputation from members of the public with management, seeking a review of our relevant local laws and regulations, council resolved that any interim measure to demonstrate the willingness to engage local law officers be given authority to A, withhold the issuing of further infringement notices for driving on the beach for alleged offenders, and B, take the details of all alleged offenders and issue them with a warning instead until such time a review of the relevant local laws are complete or alternative instructions are issued to officers.
Thank you, Councillor Mather. All right. So there's a mover in Councillor Mather. Is there a seconder for this one? Councillor Swadlin. Okay, motion is live. All right.
Thank you, Mr
Councillor
Mayor.
Mather.
Mr Mayor, I sort of hesitated on this one because it's not an easy one. And like I said, I'm happy to talk with the officer's recommendation too. When I saw that, like Pat, he got excited and I kind of got excited too. Because of the unprecedented numbers of infringement notices on Mullumbin Beach alone, I've looked at all the other beaches and seen what has been issued there, but Mullumbin seems to be the catalyst for all of these notices. And when I got the numbers earlier in the piece, we were talking about 700, I think it was. Then I asked for an update. Those earlier numbers showed that like 2.5 on an average infringement notices per day. Now it came around about the $220,000 worth of income for us. And I'm sure that wasn't intended. We'd rather see people happy and doing the right thing. But that's what we are facing. When I asked for further update, was another month, I think, later, we were up to 3.5 infringement notices a day. So the number of infringements have escalated, and the staff might like to correct me if I'm wrong there. But what I wanted to do is to highlight that there are a lot of unhappy people out there with notices. If they're doing the wrong thing, ping them big time. But there's one thing that hasn't been mentioned here, and that's that going to the boat ramp. In Mullumbin Beach, there is no boat ramp as such, but under local laws it's been identified as having one, but it doesn't say how wide. But it does have 50 metres either side of that boat ramp, but nobody really knows where the boundaries are. And I suspect, I might be wrong, I suspect that the vehicles that go off the grassy area onto the beach to the water are on the boat ramp. And if that's the boat ramp according to local laws, with 50 metre buffer on each side of that, they're doing nothing wrong. If they're not hooning, one would ask the question, well, why are they getting infringement? They're on the boat ramp. Sorry? Well, you can, for safety reasons, and they do. I've heard that from a number of people. But there's been nothing that's been mentioned about the boat ramp. And I'd like to know, and I'll dissect it down the track, to find out how many of those infringements have been on the boat ramp and turned around and come back. And they're really not hooning. And I can see that we're having a lot of unhappy people out there. with how many, what's the fine now, Matt, Nate? $400?
Through the chair, I haven't got the exact numbers
Oh,
on the
around
spec yet.
about.
From the past sort of 4 months, yeah, we're looking at about $330 sort of thing so far.
Yeah, yes, for 3 months, $330 for one Malambin Beach. Yeah.
Yes.
And no doubt we're all going to try and get it right, and we will.
Councillor Mather, would you like a response? Councillor Watson might
Oh,
go
look,
to the
I'm happy
officer
for
first,
everybody
if
else to
that's okay.
talk, Mr Mayor.
Yep, I might ask the officer to provide a response to that, if you don't mind that. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Through the chair. Just want to quickly mention for this one, and thanks for raising some of these concerns for Councillor Mather. The data previously reported to you guys, not through the questions on notice, but previous to that, sort of shows the increasing number of infringements being issued for driving unlawfully on beaches. The laws exist to reduce the risk to people and the environment. That's why they're there. Would you like my councillor recommendation?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, sorry, my officer recommendation. As Councillor East was a little bit excited before about, our recommendation would be that Council continue to monitor and enforce the requirements of local law 4 in regard to vehicles driving on beaches, however allow for vehicles to enter the beach. I just wanted to add a little bit to the report there. You brought up Mullumbin, Councillor Mather, specifically for Mullumbin, to allow U-turns without penalty.
My question to that would be, what about the ones who've actually done that and have been penalised and paid their penalty? Where do we go with them? Because we've identified that we could have a concession there for people who just want to go up and turn around and come back. I think they're the things that we probably have to think about. We don't have to have an answer today, Mr Mayor. All right. But I think it's something that we need to mull over.
The first step, I think, Councillor Mather, is whether you support the officer's recommendation here or not. I'm going to go to Councillor Watson first. Had a question, Councillor Mather, then Councillor Friend, then I'll come to you.
Just through the chair, Nat, I'm excited too. But I just want to know, have you worked out by this at any chance yet how long this U-turn is to take so that we don't get ourselves in strife? But also, I believe the signs need to be changed from warning to stop so that people understand that they can't go down there. And then if we keep the registration plate, which I'm sure I've spoken to you about in the past, and then if they do it again, they get pinged. That's it. There shouldn't be any other thing. I had a fellow actually ring me from Victoria the other day about being done at the boat ramp at Fisherman's Beach. And when I finished explaining everything to him, he said, "Oh, okay then." So they do agree. It's just that they just don't expect to get it, I think, more than anything. And I think we need to say, you will be fined. Not you may be fined, you will be fined. That way there's no situation where they're thinking that, oh, maybe I might get away with it this time, you know. So anyway, that's my thoughts.
Councillor Friend.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I have a couple of questions, and I foreshadow the motion of the officer as well. So I'm just wanting to foreshadow that motion of the recommended, the officer recommendation, but I'd like to add to commence from the 21st of November 23, which is tomorrow. So I'd like to foreshadow that particular one. The wording has not changed except that addendum. Penalty to commence 21st, without penalty to commence 21st of November 23. Now, my question, thank you so much, Nat. If only warnings were given and there was a rollover with death or injury on not just Mullumbin but any of the beaches, where is the liability for council at this stage, considering that they are bathing reserves and they're classed as bathing reserves, unlike the gazetted road at Farnborough?
My understanding, the legal proceedings that we would be liable, as in council would be liable.
Okay, and do you believe this is why the infringements have been issued? I've got a couple of questions here.
My understanding that the infringements have been issued because essentially you're breaking the law of local law number 4.
How many signs are there along Mullumbin before you get to the beach area?
As you drive in on the Mullumbin, there's a small regulatory sign on the left, and you continue further along the track. There's a large sign to your right that says "Don't drive past this sign," and that's there because once you do drive past that sign, it's very difficult to exit that area of Mullumbin. There's another big sign right as you enter the beach on your right as well.
So,
So 3. Sorry,
So-
short
okay.
answer, 3.
okay, thank you so much. All right, so what do you think might occur, in your expert opinion, if warnings were just issued?
Depends exactly how it looks. Roy, as Principal Ranger Roy Lewandowski's probably reviewed a lot more than I have. I think there will be an increase, and the officers agree with being on that one as well, of people driving on the beach. Probably coming back to Councillor Watson's question of exactly what is a U-turn. We'll have to have some serious consideration into that. A U-turn could mean you do a rather large loop right down to the low tide. The low tide mark at Mullumbin is a long way down the beach, and whether a U-turn means you do a couple of little turns before you come off the beach as well. So all those things would need to be looked at.
Okay, thank you. And I still stand by the foreshadowed motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Swadley?
Yes, I'd just like to have a quick, ask a couple of questions in relation to it. When someone does something reasonably, it is foreseen that someone would reasonably, if they go past those signs and done a U-turn, it would be reasonable that they made a mistake and then got off the beach. I think where we find it wouldn't be unreasonable if they don't have a boat on it and they continue on down the beach, then I would feel that would be classed as somewhere you'd end up issuing a penalty infringement. Is that correct? In that process?
Yes, I would agree with you.
Yeah. So in a court of law, we look at reasonably, what the reasonable person would do. And in this instance, if you're driving down, you've somehow missed the sign, I don't know how, it's big enough, and you do on there and you quickly do a U-turn, then reasonably that person wouldn't get fined. In my opinion, that person would go off the beach, and nothing would be more done about it. I think what's interesting about it is the determination of driving a U-turn, and I think that's some clarity that I suppose as you go further on this you'll find out. But certainly, in my experience in local laws, it's no different than someone staying for longer in a parking bay. So we have using a 15 or 20 minute leeway in a parking bay. So does that mean from...
Councillor, sorry, we're sort of going into debate now.
Okay, sorry. So my argument is that I think what you've got here is certainly a good recommendation, and I'm happy to support it. Yeah.
Councillor Eastwood?
Yeah, I've got a question in relation to the signage. Councillor Bell and I were coming back from the Park meeting. We called in and had a look, and as soon as you actually turn off, there's that first sign, it actually tells you that it's an offence to go past that point, whereas everybody knows that it's not. So kind of having that sign there, and it's not really an offence to go past that, is it really? No. So having that sign there, I think, softens the effect of the other signs, because then somebody can see the other signs that say it's an offence, and you go, well, I know I'm allowed to be here. You know what I mean? Like, I reckon you probably need to move that sign, because you've had a good look at it. Did you take a photo? Adam, I didn't. I thought you took a photo of that one. I took a photo of the other one, but I thought it was on my other phone. But yeah, it's quite. It actually does say that it's an offence to go. You know, you can't go down that road, and we know you can. So that's probably a little bit of a problem, I reckon. But maybe that needs to be moved further down, or whatever. I don't know. Or disappear.
Yeah. Thanks, Councillor Eastwood. Good point.
Just a question, if I may, of course, through Mr. Chair, to Nat. Just in terms of, I really am encouraged by the recommendation that you guys have put forward. I just wondered, though, whether you'd even consider slightly amending the wording, something to the effect that either enter the beach to perform an immediate U-turn or similar without penalty. And the reason for that, it gives you guys some discretion ultimately from this table that we delegate to you to be able to use that discretion. It's for circumstances where people realise that they're not meant to be on there, and they, like at Mullumbin, it's very difficult to reverse back out of that narrow section at the end, and so if someone goes on there and does a U-turn immediately, I would hope that discretion would take that into consideration. Similarly, there was a gentleman at Fisherman's Beach who, as a disabled gentleman who saw a vehicle in trouble getting bogged close to the tide coming in. He drove down to offer assistance. The gentleman on the beach said, "No, I'm okay, I've got it sorted." The other vehicle drove straight off. To me, that would be captured under or similar. I don't feel that the need that we would want to target people that were doing that action, but ultimately that would be, I guess, whether through you, Mr. CEO, whether the officers have the ability to accept the suggestion of or similar. I don't know whether you can or not, but that would be what I'd be flagging as a preference to improve even the recommendation that you guys, or the suggestion that you guys are putting up, because I think it is a very sound way to move forward.
Mr. Chairman, I've chatted to a few councillors on this topic. Police officers, local laws officers, rangers in our case, work best when things are black and white. Things are not black and white, but we like them to be the darkest shade of grey that they can be. We do get criticised for exercising discretion from time to time. I think the or similar makes the darker grey a little lighter.
Okay, any other questions? Councillor Watson.
Immediate term.
I've just been rethinking with your recommendation, instead of just warning them and letting them get away with it. Do that work? Yeah. I'm still thinking we need to have it so that they get one warning and then they get pinged for doing it, and just leave it at that for now. Because otherwise, as you said, they're going to keep doing it over and over again. We're going to have more strife than Flash Gordon. Is it hard to set up a system where we record the rego plate, and if they do it again, we fine them? Is there a way we can word that to say that? Because I think that is probably what we're really looking for.
Well, there's probably two components to that, Councillor Watson. One is, can they physically do that or technologically do that? And secondly, can the wording be done?
We can most definitely record the number plates. That's not a problem. We don't have to do the search to find out who the owners are, to keep that information.
Yeah, that's right.
That's no problem. As to whether we want to allow them to do 1, 2 or 10, that's open for discussion.
And I guess that's the role of the signage, isn't it? Yeah. Right. Councillor Mather, I'm going to ask you to speak to your
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It was mentioned just a little while ago about softening of the signage. Now, the members may not be aware that there was a deputation with the officers in relation to the signage, and that was the primary reason for the deputation, was to discuss the efficiency and the effectiveness of the signage, because there seems to be some confusion. Like I said, there was no mention in the report about the boat ramp. And if people go down that track on the understanding that they're not going on the beach to whom, they're going on the boat ramp, the camera is placed in such a position that it actually sees them going onto the beach. But they're entitled to legally be on that beach if they're on the boat ramp. That's why the boat ramp needs to be included in any debate. But anyway, I thought I'd flag that, because I think we were talking about moving the camera to a place where they can actually see them on the beach where they are illegal. Because like I said, we don't know, and there's nothing in the local law to show how wide the boat ramp is. It's not marked. And you've got 50 metres either side of that. And if the cameras catch you on there, you're not illegal.
well, we've got
So
different legal advice around that, Councillor Mather.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I've seen the legal advice and it does not mention a boat ramp at all. So they can only advise us on what we tell them. That's all I can say.
All right.
Because if they haven't mentioned that, obviously they haven't been told that. And that was the reason we had some people talk to our officers to discuss the signage. And when that comes back, when the new local laws come back in, we need to have a look at that as well, because it needs to be tidied. I don't doubt that it needs to happen, but it needs to be tidied so that we can all go home and say, look, if they've messed up, ping them big time. I don't have a problem with that.
All right.
But my thought in putting this notice of motion together was to give them a warning, one warning, take their details, do it again, you're gone.
Okay, thank you.
Mr Mayor, I have
You
questions.
got another question, councillor?
Yes, I do.
All right, thank you.
Under local law 4, is it the fact that they're obtaining these infringements because they don't have a trailered boat on the actual vehicle?
How the current local law is written, it specifically mentions a trailable vessel.
Yes.
As you would be aware, we have been allowing people with kayaks and other types of vessels, porter boats. There's all sorts of wonderful things you can buy these days. So we wouldn't be issuing to the fine that to anyone that we can clearly see that there's some sort of vessel in the back of their car or on top of their car, or however it's being brought down to the beach on the car.
Yes.
If that was missed as part of the initial review, the initial infringement, when a review's come in and evidence is provided, we would then waive the fine for that particular one. And just back to, sorry, Councillor Mather's question about the boat ramp. So it's 50 metres either side of the entrance to the beach, and that is clearly written out in the local law and displayed in the local law, and that is the boat ramp the whole
I'll be
way
happy
to
for
the...
you to show me. I'll be happy to take that back.
Yeah.
Mr Mayor, through you, signage. Now, there is loads of signs there. Is there an issue with placing a stop symbol on those signs? Is there legal issues under infrastructure to place a stop symbol on those signs? Stop, you not to enter without a trailered boat or what have you.
My understanding of that, and the Principal Ranger may be able to assist me here, but it's around the regulatory signage, and a stop sign is a regulatory signage, and you have to stop there, so we have to be very careful of the wording we use there. That's why we have the big red warning sign.
Yes. Yep, thank you.
If that answers your question, Councillor.
Just a clarification, Mr Chair. In the event that this motion's lost, is the foreshadowed motion from Councillor Friend, will that
Become the
basically the officer's recommendation with some
Will
few
become
minor
the motion.
alterations? That'll be up.
Yep.
Great, thank you.
And Mr Mayor, in conclusion, I can say with authority that you can't go on the beach or leave the grassy area and reverse back up the trail if you've made a mistake, because I've tried it. And thanks to some very, very nice gentlemen on the day who helped me out.
The mind boggles, Councillor Mather. Yeah. All right, councillors, we'll bring this back to debate now. So Councillor Mather's
Moving the original
moved
motion.
it, obviously. There's a second on Councillor Watson, Swadling, I beg your pardon. Anyone speaking against this?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll speak against this particular notice only because when we're talking about warnings, this could further lax the behaviour of a lot more people that want to drive on the beach. Don't worry, mate, you only get a warning. Nothing's going to happen. Accidents happen, council will be liable. These are in place for a particular reason, and also to help the actual ecology of the whole dural system as well, and shorebirds, the food that they eat, and also to protect the bathers and their families that go down there and actually walk down there and want to have a family picnic. So at this stage, I'm speaking against this particular notice of motion, and I look forward to the foreshadowed if such a case, if that's the case.
Thank you, Councillor Friend. Anyone speaking for? Anyone else speaking against? All right. I'll speak against, and Councillor Mather, I applaud your intent here. I understand what you're trying to do. I just don't think this is the actual solution. I'm sorry. But I do applaud the officers for their flexibility in this. I think the foreshadowed motion of Councillor Friend in allowing that U-turn is a good solution in the interim until the local laws hits the deck and we get the opportunity to actually have a good look at that. But ultimately, without, I suppose, predisposing my future vote, I can't support this one because I think I concur with Councillor Friend's comment that ultimately, if you don't have penalties in places, then there's no reason to. There's no reason to actually abide by the local law, in a sense. So I find myself not being able to support this one, councillors.
Mr Mayor, I
Councillor
might speak against
Eastwood?
it too.
Okay.
Since I was so excited, I better say something about it. Yes, Mr Mayor, I really do applaud our officers in this situation. It's going to make a big difference, I think, to people that do genuinely make a mistake. They'll be able to turn around and just come straight back out of there, and it just makes total common sense. I think the officer's recommendation is great. Whilst I think Councillor Mather's just showing her wonderful heart, I just don't think it's really going to improve the situation.
Yeah. All right. We're going to wrap up debate, councillors. Councillor Mather, do you want to wrap up?
No, I think it's all been said, Mr Mayor, thank you.
All right. We'll go to the vote. We've got a mover in Councillor Mather, seconded Councillor Swadling. Those in favour of Councillor Mather's motion? Those against? Motion is lost. Okay, so the foreshadowed motion from Councillor Friend now becomes the motion. Thank you. Seconded Councillor Bello. And we'll just quickly read it so that everyone understands it. Is that council continue to monitor and enforce the requirements of local law 4 in regard to vehicles driving on beaches, however allow for vehicles that enter the beach to perform an immediate U-turn without penalty.
Mr Mayor, that was hoping to narrow that to Molumban only, but that might not be consistent with the discussions that were.
Well, Nat's proposing an amendment to make that Molumban Beach only. Not real sure what support you'll get on that one. Are you happy to leave it at this one for the time being? Or would you prefer to have the words Molumban Beach included in the foreshadowed motion?
I would have preferred to have kept, put Molumban into my officer recommendation. I know I didn't in this one, but
okay. Well, I'm going to go to the mover of that, Councillor Friend. Are you happy for that amendment?
Yes, I am happy with that amendment because mostly we are talking about Molumban Beach, the signage, the track, the hazardous area to get onto where that so-called boat ramp is. So I am happy to include Molumban Beach because it's hard to include all of the beaches, I think. I'm just explaining why, because they're all different in their layout. So I'm happy with that. Thank you.
All right. Councillor Bello, you're the seconder. Did you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I guess the question is what other beaches would be captured in this NAP that you perhaps thought would have been had you not put this in? What other ones would have had the option to do an immediate U-turn?
My concerns, well, the reasoning for Molumban, essentially, I'll start with, is the difficulty of not being able to see the boat ramp from when you enter the beach, will not be able to safely turn around without causing an issue or getting fined. But when you go to the other beaches,
which other beaches would we be talking though?
Tanby Point, Fisherman's, you can see the beach quite clearly from the car park. You don't have to physically drive onto the boat ramp, whether it be the concrete one or onto the beach, to be able to see the entrance to the beach.
So there's 3 beaches.
There's more than 3. There's also Rita Mata. That's obviously you are able to see that as well from before you actually drive onto the beach. So that'll be similar. We are also doing some work at Coconut Beach and Zilsey as well. So all those ones, yeah. It's more about just the vision of the boat ramp. A lot of the reasoning when we do the review of the infringements is that they couldn't see the boat ramp, but you can quite clearly from those other ones that I mentioned.
I guess if I could just extend that question, so I'm interested to know your thoughts on those that have been infringed who have recently moved here, have never been on the beach before, take their vehicle down on there to test the sand, basically go down and do a U-turn. The attitude of at this point would not be supportive of that action.
That's right, yeah.
All right. So Councillor Bello, are you still happy to second with that amendment?
Mr Chair, I don't want to drag this thing on longer than it has to be, I guess, but ultimately, without dragging on any further,
Well, this is an important one,
I'd
Councillor.
be comfortable to further foreshadow that I believe there's scope to allow the very dark grey discernment of the officers to be extended to those other ones as well. I know of a gentleman who got in a very difficult situation at Rita Mata, couldn't reverse out and literally went on, did a U-turn, came back. That would be supportive under this policy. However, if it's not included, it won't be. So immediate U-turns to me on those other ones are not a concern that I believe. So I'd be happy to foreshadow an additional one post this one if it's not supported that does actually capture those other ones in it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Anyone speaking for this one?
Mr Mayor, I had a question. Councillor Eastwood needs to go first.
No, I'm actually going to start the debate.
I caution on doing something in haste, Mr Mayor.
Yeah, microphone, Councillor Mather.
Yeah. I'd caution on doing something in haste, because what we were trying to do before, and we understand where we're all coming from, to make sure that we're fair, that we make sure that we send a clear message, but we've got to make sure that the public realises that we are the authority, and as long as we've got clear signage and consistent signage, they will understand it, and I don't have a problem with the fines. But while people are trying to do the right thing and have not demonstrated that they are radicals or misbehaving, I find that we're going to do something that may not capture the right people. And if we don't get the right wording, it's like you tried to use it before, it lacks what they call the finality principle. You've got to make it clear what you're targeting and clear how you want it to go. And I think while we're travelling on the same road until such time as we get it right, I just caution on doing something in a hurry, that's all.
Thank you, Councillor Mather. All right.
Thank you, Mr
Councillor
Mayor.
Eastwood.
I moved it. Thank you.
Yeah, Councillor Eastwood had a...
No, you asked for the debate.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. All right. All right, so, all right, well, just as a comment from myself, before I go to you to wrap up, Councillor Friend, I was comfortable with the initial proposal from the officers without the mention of Mullumbin Beach. And I think I'm probably aligning myself with Councillor Bellows' thinking here. So I won't support this in its current format, but I certainly would support Councillor Bellows' foreshadowed motion. All right, Councillor Friend.
Yes, Mr Mayor, if that is the case, let us make an amendment and remove Mullumbin Beach. And also, are we in debate?
Yes, we are.
Oh, lovely, because I'll open.
Well, we've gone back. This is the original motion, Councillor Friend. So you've retracted the amended motion.
Yes,
Yep.
that's correct. I personally think this is a great outcome for people in Livingstone Shire who actually do the right thing. And I have to say that with all of the boat ramps, there is signage there that clearly says, do not drive on the beach unless you're retrieving a vessel or launching a vessel. Do not drive more than 50 metres past that point. There's signage on all of these beaches. And although I do take Nat's point that the other ramps and the other areas of access are quite clear to see and Mullumbin's not, I feel that we need to make a start somewhere. And I do also want to say that I said commence the 21st of November, that's tomorrow. So let's commence this as soon as possible. And I think is also another positive as well. So I'm all for this and I commend it to the table.
Thank you, Councillor Friend. All right. Anyone speaking against?
I'd just like to know what Councillor Bellows' pre-motion would be.
This is it. So Councillor Bellow, just to be clear, Councillor Mather, I think aligned himself with the original recommendation from the officers, as did a number of us. And now that Councillor Friend has withdrawn her amendment, we're back to the officer's original recommendation. Not at all confusing,
So
is it?
this applies to all beaches, Mr Mayor?
All beaches, councillor.
Okay. Is that to the officer? Is that achievable, officer?
Yes, it is achievable. We just have to monitor it with the cameras. We can do it, yeah.
Okay, thank you, Mr Mayor.
All right, thank you. Anyone else like to speak for Councillor
Well, I'll
Eastwood?
speak for it, Mr Mayor. Whilst I don't believe that we have to do anything in too much haste, I think that I would have been quite happy, Mr Mayor, to have just included Mullumbin, but if we're going to put all the beaches there, I'll happily support that as well. I think this just makes something a little bit fairer on our community. It takes away, like I said in the last motion, it takes away any form of mistake, and the people are able to repair that mistake. And if they decide not to, and they decide to continue on the beach, then they'll get hit with a fine or a penalty. So this does, I think, still sends the notice to the community that you can't drive on our beaches, but it allows for them to make a mistake and repair it.
Yep, thank you. All right. Any other comments, councillor, before we go to the vote? Councillor Watson.
Just for I've received many calls from sort of tourists who've been driving along our coastline and thought, oh, let's have a look down there. And they're getting a fine and they're going home with a foul taste in their mouth from visiting our area, and I'm hoping this will sort that problem because they're not likely to do it a second time. So that's why I'm happy to support this. And again, I also would have agreed with just Mullumbin on its own, but anyway.
All right. Thank you. All right. Anyone else? Councillor Bello.
Yeah, I do want to really acknowledge the officers being willing to, I guess, bring something back for us to consider ultimately. I think there's a recognition that a significant number of fines were starting to alarm certainly the councillors and the community, so solutions needed to be explored, and that's really what's been presented here. And I acknowledge, Nat, that initially it probably was just meant to be Mullumbin, but I know you guys will do the best you can to carry out, the resolution of the council, which you guys always do. It's not an easy job, and I know that we've on numerous occasions contacted you to have a review of a certain infringement, and that's a very difficult process to do. So I think what this is trying to achieve, though, is recognition that most people want to do the right thing. It's not that there is a lawless society out there. Certainly there's a handful that will always do the wrong thing, no matter what signage you've got, and what your regulations is, but 99% of people want to do the right thing. And those who have found themselves in a circumstance where they just physically are going to struggle to be able to reverse back, whether it's Mullumbin, Reedermata to an extent, this allows for that flexibility that you would want to encourage safe behaviour. So on that basis, I think it's not going to be without its challenges, and there will be ones where people will probably contact councils and say, oh, they ping me for my immediate U-turn just because I've been 7 minutes on the beach. Is it 5 minutes? Is it 4 minutes? That's not easy, and that's what the CEO was trying to refer to before, that the blacker it is, the better. But it's not always black and white. And I think discernment can be exercised there and on the basis of safety in the short term and short timing of immediate. I guess immediate should be able to be determined on that beach if it's, and I'm glad I'm not the one doing it, but I can see down the track that I'll probably be contacted saying, I reckon this is immediate, what do you think? But I'm glad you boys will be administering that, so if indeed this is successful. So I thank you very much for your contribution.
Councillor Swaddling.
Yeah, it's always a difficult one. Having been a local laws officer myself, I know the issues and the stresses that staff have, and I commend the staff for the work that they do, in particularly putting this together, this resolution. I sit with this resolution and the U-turn permitted. As I said before, reasonably, we need to, when you look at it in a court of law, you actually, it looks at reasonability about, particularly around a decision made at the time by that officer. And I think, with this now, I think it's a good outcome. and certainly it stops a lot of those issues that have been identified previously that have been a challenge. But certainly it's under no circumstance, if you go on there and you go longer and down the road, you're going to get a fine. So I'm pretty happy to support this.
Thank you, and I'll just make a closing comment. I just follow on from comments from Councillor Bello in relation to some of the decisions you might have to make and what is an appropriate time to be on the beach or not. And I think from our perspective as councillors, when we get those calls that we inevitably will, we just have to support you as much as we possibly can, unless it's something glaringly silly, gentlemen. We have to support you. I just think we acknowledge the work that you've done on this, and thank you for bringing it to the table. All right, Councillor Friend.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, first and foremost, and thank you to my colleagues here for also thanking the hardworking staff in our local laws, the rangers, the managers. It's a tough gig. They are the department that gets abuse the most within council. They're out there on the front line having to deal with not just driving on beaches, but overgrown allotments, dog attacks, animal complaints, and so many other complaints that their department looks after. So I'd just like to say thank you for the tough job that you all do. It really is, and you do it well. We're a Category 3 council. We have how many rangers, Nat? There's 5 rangers from all over Livingstone, which is a very, very large shire, and they're constantly busy. When we start opening up beaches, and all beaches, for driving on the beaches, you know, as I said earlier, Farnborough is the only gazetted road that Queensland Police Service also monitor. The rest are classed as bathing reserves, and we'll see what happens after the engagement for the new local laws. However, keeping in mind with 5 rangers looking after the second largest coastline in Queensland, and we are the second largest coastline in Queensland, if we were to open up all beaches for vehicles, where are we going to get the staff? How are we going to pay for the staff? You know, it's a difficult thing to do, and they certainly punch above their weight. So I commend each and every officer today in the room. Nat and Roy, thank you so much. Greg as well, and obviously Chris Ireland, the whole team that do look after the local laws within Livingstone Shire, because I just think you do a bang up job, and Mr CEO, they deserve a pay rise. I'm joking. Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Friend. All right, on that note, we'll go to the vote. Got a mover and Councillor Friend, seconded Councillor Bello. All in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. And I'm going to move a procedural motion for a cup of tea, ladies and gentlemen. All in favour? Thank you. Six.
Such other time as it takes. When we get to the end of these 15 before we go home.
Yeah. Well, we will. We'll just have to.
We've got another 30 to do tomorrow.
Yeah. motion to resume from the break. All in favour? Thank you very much. Carried unanimously. We're back live again, guys. Perfect. All right. Next item, councillors, is 10.5, a notice of motion from Councillor Mather in relation to Marlborough contractors. And the recommendation reads that due to the conditions of sections of both Glen Prairie and Englewood roads and the lack of council resources to administer maintenance to the northern rural areas of the Shire, council employ the services of one or more suitable contractors to undertake the identified sections to be serviced, to be carried out prior to Christmas breakup. Councillor Mather, would you like to speak to your
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor.
Might actually get a, sorry, if you're proposing, I might just ask for a seconder first. Thank you. Can I get a seconder? Councillor Swadley. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr Mayor, as the councillors know, there is no Marlborough depot that's being utilised, and we have to rely on staff or gangs from the caves or elsewhere to service those roads. Now, I believe that it's been a year, perhaps more, since those roads have had work. And I'd even go so far as to say the Cooltandra Road, at the moment, I think the only word is it's destroyed at the moment. If we don't have the machinery and the gang to do the work on these roads in the north, it means that the rural people don't get serviced. And we've got, according to this officer commentary, sections of the Englewood Road exceed 10. And sections of the Glen Prairie Road also exceed 10. Now, we all know that the bump meter does it on an average. There's some little bits in between that might be all right, but those bits that are not all right are causing damage, constant damage, tyres, you name it, shockies, springs, and worse, to their vehicles. And it's going on because they're not getting serviced. Now, if we don't have a gang to service them, and I know the Caves gang has been in the Marlborough area, the Stanage Bay area, recent weeks, we've got to do something alternate. Because some of these people pay very large rates. And there's not one day I'll go past today and allow that to continue. Because I'm ashamed to tell them, I'm sorry, I've already put in a request. How many times over the last year? Still not done? Something's got to give. And I've just given. I'm spent. I'm begging and borrowing and trying to find alternative ways to get these people serviced. Because I can tell you there's no support in that northern section for this council.
Well, Councillor Mather, I just think that's a little bit over the top, that comment.
There might be the odd one, Mr Mayor, but I can tell you there's a lot of them are very unhappy. Because they're picking up damage all the time and paying rates for the same thing. And I just feel embarrassed that they've had to wait this long. And Cooltandra Road, that's been another one where there's been a lot of tyres. And there was an accident the other day between the two entrances to Ogmore.
Well, Cooltandra Road, I'm sorry, is extraneous to your notice of motion,
It is.
Councillor. Yeah.
But while this one nominated those two roads that had been waiting a year, in the meantime there was an accident at Ogmore which caused the detour around the Ogmore Road and the Cooltandra Road. Now they're both wrecked because of the thousands of cars that have gone on the road over a 6 or 8 hour period. So that's another road that needs to go to it. So we need to do something and do it quickly if we need to recover some credibility in that northern section, because the people up there, they're tired of waiting, tired of being patient, and they're tired of being told something will happen and it doesn't happen. And I won't make excuses anymore.
Thank you, Councillor Mather. Any questions of Councillor Mather? Councillor Friend?
Thank you. I suppose, I've got a couple of questions to the officer as well. So we see in the report that Englewood Road repairs on our isolated defects will be completed by Christmas. Glen Prairie Road had 3 defects from chainage 2400 to 17,300. When were these first put into, who am I directing my question to? Thank you. When were these first put into the forward works, and were they put into the forward works because of the councillors' requests?
For the situation of Englewood Road had previously. For Englewood Road had previously been inspected, and we were arranging for a contractor. That contractor will be attending to Englewood Road starting tomorrow. For Glen Prairie Road, we inspected that last week, and we've identified part of that. The first 15 kilometres has a few isolated sections that we'll be attending to at the same time. So contractor heading up there tomorrow for about 3 days.
Okay, and did you make Councillor Mather, who's the portfolio holder, aware of the repairs to these roads from her requests?
From memory, at our last grading meeting, Englewood Road, we said we were doing isolated repairs from memory, but we weren't doing, the advice was we wouldn't be doing full grading on those roads until after Christmas.
So the full grading is in the forward works for when we say after Christmas, January, February?
From memory, they're about February, March, I think. There's a number of roads up there that we believe will reach intervention by then. Councillor Mavis has referred to Kiltandra Road today. That's come about due to an accident on the Bruce Highway on Friday.
Yes.
And the traffic was diverted along Ogmore Road, Kiltandra Road, around that traffic. We're sending an officer up there to assess Kiltandra Road. It may very well be the most important now because of the flogging it got on Friday. We don't know until we inspect it, which we're hoping to do probably in the next couple of days and that. If it was very dangerous, we would attend to it immediately. But we just got to inspect it first to have a look. Yeah.
My next question, I suppose, would be to the Mayor or CEO, the Mayor. So if these are already in the forward works, we still continue to vote on this notice of motion?
That's a great question, Councillor. It's just going through my own mind as well. I'm just wondering whether this notice of motion is unnecessary now, given that in the short term you're going to be looking at Glen Prairie Road and Englewood Road, and you're getting contractors to go out there this week.
Yeah, starting tomorrow they'll be attending Englewood Road and Glen Prairie Road for intermediate repairs.
Okay, all right. And then, sorry, Councillor Watson.
I've got one more question.
Next year, these roads, including these roads and possibly Kiltandra Road, will be subject of capital works again?
Not capital works, no, they're maintenance, so it's not in the forward works, it's in our maintenance grading
In your maintenance programs, all right.
Yeah, and so, yes, and as I said, if Kiltandra was absolutely destroyed last Friday, we would do it before Christmas, if it's gone past their intervention level.
Yep, okay,
Yeah.
all right, thank you.
Just one more question quickly, Mr Mayor. Just for pure curiosity, you mentioned, you said in the report further on Glen Prairie Road, you found that there were no isolated sections, and I want to know what you're implying by noting that the adjoining properties are owned by the ADF. Are you suggesting that they should contribute? I'm not sure. I just wanted clarity.
We have had this discussion in the past, that those sections of road where solely the ADF owns blocks of land and lease it back to farmers or graziers, that they would contribute. They contribute to all roads that go into their training area, depending on the extent of use by their people and by normal ratepayers or normal traffic, depends on how much they contribute. So for that last section of Glen Prairie Road, because it's all their land, even if it's only the property leaseholders that are using it, not ADF personnel, we would still want ADF to pay for 100% of it. Yeah.
Thank you.
And sorry, that has been mentioned at the table before and agreed to in general, as a general principle. Sometimes we wait for ADF to request that sort of maintenance. or other times we may suggest to ADF that it's starting to look bad, here's the quote, do you agree to pay your share of the quote? And in the case of the last section of Glenferrie Road, it would be 100%. I think Raspberry Creek Road's 93%. There might be one property owner. And it varies everything from about 20% right up to the 100%. Yep.
Councillor Mather?
Just a response. Thanks for that, Jeff. Why would we have to wait for the Army to request work to be done on sections of the Glen Prairie Road when I've been asking for it for several months? I mean, why? And I'm talking about Copperville. It's privately owned. It's not Army land. You've got to go right to Copperville. And they're the people who go into town to work every day. So if I'm asking for work on that road, even parts of the road, because there are several sections there with corrugation, 100 metres at a time, and that's what causes the damage, the shaking, the loose nuts and bolts on your vehicle. When you've got several hundred metres of corrugation, and I'm asking, can we do something with it? Why are we waiting for the Army to put the same request in? That's all I'm asking. If we should get onto the Army and say, look, get up there and clean up that corrugation.
Right, we'll let the officer respond to that. Thank you, Councillor.
The section you're talking about, is the section of Glenferrie Road where we have identified isolated repairs. We typically leave it to the Army for, not typically, sometimes leave it to the Army to request where the section is totally adjacent to Army land, so that their leasees understand that ADF doesn't pay any rates at all. No one's paying rates, nothing, contributing nothing to council. So if they come to us, we sometimes suggest that they approach ADF. Typically we will approach ADF, but approach ADF and say, listen, it's reaching its intervention level, or it has reached. Raspberry Creek's one of the probably strong ones where we wait to Army ask, because it goes to their command gate, their, can't think what it's called, but anyway. Yeah, range control, that's it. Yeah, it goes there. So typically they're the primary users, ADF personnel, not landowners or leasees of ADF. So generally that's why sometimes we do wait for ADF to request. In the case of Glenferrie Road, we're going right up to the 17k mark with the isolated repairs. Beyond that, there's no sections over 10, so we haven't asked ADF, or we haven't had anything from those leaseholders about it. The leaseholder you're talking about is in the section we're doing.
Can I just jump in very quickly? Given for the mover and the seconder, given the responses from the officer, both verbally and in the report, do you still want council to consider this notice of motion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, please, because it hasn't happened. That's what it's intended. And if that is accepted today and it follows through, that's right. That's right.
Well, we've been given an undertaking from the officer that that work is going to be done.
I've been trying for this for a year now. I'm not going to let it go to chance. I put a lot of work into wrecking my car, going up there, identifying these problems, and it goes nowhere. I've had it.
Well, I guess...
and I'm not going to put pen to paper, knowing what needs
Councillor
to be done.
Mather, please just keep your voice down, please.
Well, I've had it, Mr. Mayor.
Well, I get that loud and clear, but we can keep a civil tone at the table,
That's
please.
right, but it can only go so far, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Well, we've got a... any other questions? Yeah, sure. Yeah.
I guess in the event that this motion was supported, is the organisation able to actually carry out the resolution before Christmas?
As far as isolated repairs, yes. To Englewood and Glenferrie Road, we're heading up there tomorrow, next day, with contractors. Whilst I said if Kiltandra Road got complete, which is not in this notice motion, got completely smashed by the Bruce Highway traffic last Friday, could I guarantee it get fully graded before Christmas? No. Would I be confident we could get something there? 80% yes, we would do something to get there if it's completely smashed. We would look at it compared to all our other roads. And if it's just gone to the pack because of the Bruce Highway traffic, we're obliged to act immediately. We would.
So you could carry out this resolution if it was supported?
This resolution, yes.
Okay, thank you.
It is. It's being carried out tomorrow and Wednesday and Thursday.
Excellent.
Thank you. Right. Any other questions?
Question to Jeff. I know it's not on the radar, the cool tundra, because it's in such a state? What's the plan there? Because I thought someone would have been up there today to assess it. I've had to do a report for the police officer because there will be accidents.
Well, the officer, I think, just explained a little while ago that they'll be inspecting that within the next day or so.
Yes.
Right.
I
And
just
then,
thought they would have been up there today, given the thousands of cars that have gone through.
well, again, I can't speak for the officers on that one, councillor Mather, but certainly they're given an undertaking to be there today or tomorrow or Wednesday.
Well, I still need that, the motion to go through, please, members.
All right. Okay, so we've got anyone, mover and councillor Mather. Anyone speaking against?
Mr Mayor, I'm not necessarily against this. I want to see it happening too, and I support Councillor Mather in her endeavours over this last 12 months to get something happening. It's just that it is happening. I just wondered whether Councillor Mather and the officers have been in contact over what's going on up in Anglewood and Glen Prairie roads, and given that it is happening. And on live stream, the officer has committed to doing that, and it can't be undone on live stream. Then we all have proof it's going to be done. I guess I'm just going to have to abstain my vote on this one.
Okay, acknowledging that an abstinence in vote means a no or a negative, councillor. Are you happy with that?
Yes, I'm going to abstain. Thank you.
All right. Any other? Sorry, anyone speaking for? Councillor Eastwood?
I'll speak for it, Mr Mayor. Yep, the officers have agreed to do it. Councillor Mather, let's put this up. I'm happy to support it. It's going to be done. Let's get on with it.
All right. Anyone speaking against? All right, we happy to go to the vote on this one, councillors? We got a mover in Councillor Mather, a seconder in Councillor Swaddling. All in favour? 1, 2, sorry, can I have hands again, please? 1, 2, 3, 4. Those against? Those abstaining? Right. All right, motion is carried. And look forward to hearing about the works happening. 10.6, notice of motion from Councillor Mather in relation to infrastructure charges. Now, again, Councillor Mather, I'm aware that this has been dealt with already by the officers. Do you still want this report dealt with at the table?
Yes, I did, please.
And can I ask why?
Why? Because
Because my understanding, Councillor Mather, is that the good officer here has already contacted the relevant parties and waived the fees. Mr Abbots, is that correct?
We actually withdrew the fee.
Withdrew the fees, yeah.
Sorry, through the chair. We actually withdrew the fee. A infrastructure charges notice was issued to the applicant inadvertently, and I'll explain some of the mechanics of that in a second. If the applicant's town planner then wrote into council and sort of said, hey, listen, is this infrastructure charge actually applicable? We then reviewed that, which was within the appeal period. Okay, so the charge actually doesn't take effect until the day after the appeal period. So that then gives the opportunity either to negotiate what that infrastructure charge was, or in fact withdraw it if it is in fact incorrect.
All right, so I guess that begs the question then, Mr Abbots, as to a review process is probably worthwhile within your section to make sure that sort of thing doesn't happen again. And I understand that's happened as well. Yeah, all right. All right, so thank you for that explanation. So councillors and Councillor Mather, are you happy with that explanation?
no, Mr Mayor, I'm just trying to find the notice of motion that I put in. What we have here is the recommendation I put in, the motion itself proposed, and the officer's commentary, but it has nothing where I've actually put in the background to that. And I'm just looking at that, looking for that, Mr Mayor.
All right, well, I'll come back
I'd
to
be
you
happy if you'd...
if there's any other
leave that-
questions.
Yes, to go to the next one, Mr Mayor, and I'll come back to this.
Any other questions on this one, councillors? Councillor Friend?
Yes, Mr Mayor, was the background sent through email because there was an error in sending through the information?
So we'll have it 8:24 a.m. this morning, if you're looking for it.
Sorry?
On email, 8:24 a.m.
It came in before that, it came in last week.
Yes, but if you're looking for it in a hurry, Councillor Mather, that's where you'll find it.
No, yeah.
We can put it on the screen.
So your question, councillor Friend, was?
My question was, and I have found it, I'm sure that there was an issue uploading such a large agenda in the system that it was missed, and we received an email, and the CEO has just confirmed it came in at 8:24 a.m. this morning, and going back through my timeline I found it. So that gives the, that's Councillor Mather's notice of motion and her background.
Mm.
It shows, it gives clarity to the situation.
All right, well, councillor Mather, you're clearly going to move this in that you want it retained on the agenda.
Yes, please.
All right, can I get a seconder, please? Councillor Bello?
Mr Mayor, there are two parts to this motion. A decision was made by an officer to withdraw the infrastructure charges. It makes no mention of the second one that I've raised, Mr Mayor.
The 2,648 additional loading fee?
Yes.
All right.
Because that was a 25% loading on the application, on the property. So it's an additional 25% loading fee already paid and applied to the adopted...
Councillor Mather, your microphone needs to be on. Sorry.
The $2,648, which was an additional 25% loading fee already paid and applied to the adopted application fee, be refunded to the applicant. That's what I'm asking as well, Mr Mayor.
Mr Abbots?
Through the chair, the applicant in this particular instance on-sold the property and the business to another person. So if the motion was to refund the money to the applicant, it would go to the former owner of the business.
But the application was in the name of the people who own the property now.
Through the chair, no, the application was actually in the name of the property owners who previously owned the property, and same with the payment of the money is actually, the receipt was issued to them.
Well, Mr Mayor, I think this is going to be a little complicated by the sound of it, because and I think we might need to suspend standing orders on this one, because I think there's a little bit more to this than meets the eye. The people who own the property now, they're partners. They bought the property thinking it had compliance. They found that it didn't. And they set about making it comply. In their application fee, in the fee, in the names of the people who own it now, there was that 25% loading. And that was because it was a non-compliance from the previous owner, paid for by the current owner. Because I've got it here.
Well, Councillor
And I'm
Mather, I'm going to propose or put
If you
forward
want to suspend it-
a procedural motion, Councillor Mather, to lay this on the table for you to discuss this with the
No,
officer.
This is a matter that could end up being a questionable investigation.
No, it's not questionable, Councillor Mather. The principal money has been refunded to the business owner now.
Mr. Mayor.
No, I haven't finished, Councillor Mather. The 2,648 loading fee has been explained by the officer to belong to the previous owner of the property. Now, I'm going to move a procedural motion that this lay on the table pending you getting together with the officer and going through this.
I won't go through it with the officer, Mr Mayor. I want to go through it with the table.
Well, I'm going to move a procedural motion, Councillor May, then you can choose. It can either get supported or not get supported at the table.
Mr Mayor,
But
I believe
we're going to
this
go
board...
round in circles here until we probably end up nowhere, frankly.
No, I believe this is bordering on a reportable item. That's how I feel at the moment.
Are you accusing someone of corruption here, Councillor?
No, I'm not, Mr Mayor. I'm just trying to find answers. Because when we have applications come to the table, infrastructure charges are applied, people write in and say, look, we think it's too much. Can you reduce it by this or half or whatever the case may be? We take that correspondence on board. The officer does a report with a recommendation, puts it to the table to reduce the fees or otherwise. This one didn't see the light of day.
Because it was done under delegation, Councillor Mather. And what I'm saying to you is, and let me finish, if I move this procedural motion and it's successful, it will come back to the table anyway, once you've spoken to the officer offline.
Mr Mayor, this one needs to be heard by the table. Because
And it will be heard by the table, Councillor, when it comes back. But all I'm suggesting to you is rather than us going round in circles with this now, then we actually sort it out offline and bring it back to the table.
Well, Mr Mayor, you do what you like. I know what I have to do.
All right, well, I'm going to move a procedural motion that this lay on the table pending further conversations between Councillor Mather and the officers in the planning department, and that it comes back to the table at the December meeting.
It's too late to ask questions, Mr Mayor.
Probably as Councillor Friend, yes. Lucy, did you get all that? All right. So my procedural motion either rises or fails. I'm just going to move it now. So all in favour? Those against? Carried. All right. Thank you, councillors and councillor and Mr. Abbots. Can I suggest you seek out Councillor Mather, please? Thank you. All right, 10.7 from Councillor Bello. I'll just get my computer up.
If I could, Mr Chair.
Sure.
Just to help move things along, just a slight adjustment there. Given the comprehensive information back from the officers, in terms of the extent of work that needs to be done, it would be unrealistic to expect that before Christmas. So if I could just remove prior to Christmas to basically wording of the effect within a reasonable time frame.
All right. So an amendment to the recommendation is to be made available for a tenant within a reasonable time frame. All right. Okay.
Mr Mayor, may I ask a question?
Of course you can.
Councillor Bello. Thank you, Councillor Bello. Within a reasonable time frame. It can take up to 18 months to get any type of tradespersons at the moment. You know,
Not a good tiler.
it's no. You know you're an excellent tiler, excellent. And I no, there isn't. But when you say within a reasonable time frame, what are we talking specifically? Because a reasonable time frame to get tradies might be 12 months, might be 18 months. We could be lucky and it could be 6 weeks. But what is a reasonable time frame in your opinion?
I would probably believe that the CEO would be able to manage his staff to carry out the resolution, make the appropriate, if it was successful, make the appropriate inquiries and book tradesmen in and tradespersons in, and it would follow the flow of the market. So I'm not going to be prescriptive in demanding it be in a month or 2 or 6, but I think the intent would be reflected in the actions of the staff to achieve the resolution.
Councillor Bello, in your opinion, would we have to put this into the consideration for the next budget for the next council to consider? Because this would $80,000 to $100,000 worth of repairs would then end up being a capital works.
Well, I guess that would be up to the councillors to either support it or not, ultimately. So I could appreciate if they don't, for those concerns about capital budgets, but that would be at the discretion of each councillor.
All right. Of course, Ken.
Councillor Bello, I'm just wondering your experience in the building industry. Do you think this building's a bit past it? Because it doesn't look flash.
Do I think the building's a bit past it?
Past being cleaned up, because it's
Look,
asbestos, it's got rust everywhere, there's rust on the insides. It looks like a huge bill to clean up something that should probably be demolished and something else built.
Well, that would be not for me to provide an authority on that.
I'm just
as
asking
I'm not a
as
registered
you...
builder.
No, I know you're not a registered builder, but you've been in
So,
thousands of houses over the years and you'd understand. I'm just asking because I looked at it and I've seen it myself many times and thought, my God, that should be knocked over because it's going to twist around and disappear in the next cyclone, you know.
well, happy to leave it to the debate, but $100,000 to get a house tenantable or able to accommodate a human being, to me is an indication that it's certainly retrievable. So that's the data that's been provided, which has been very helpful. So it's clearly retrievable, but look forward to the debate.
Any other questions, councillors?
What's the alternative? Demolish it. Pay the money or demolish it, correct, or is that it? I mean, I don't like to see houses be empty when there's so much need out there.
Potentially it could be relocated if someone was looking for a project.
Save like that. There's a lot of money that would go into the safety reasons. I know, if I'm going to compare that with the old church up at Marlborough, it costs more to outfit it for safety reasons before we can even sell it.
Councillor Friend,
Yes,
question?
I have a question to Mr CEO in relation to the $80,000 to $100,000. If this is not noted in this particular notice of motion for consideration within the next budget, would officers then have to look at stopping other capital works or other projects to enable this to be repaired in a timely fashion?
In short, Mr Chairman, yes. I think in the report we say that we haven't yet been able to identify what that might be, but if the resolution is successful, then we'd set about that task of finding out, and we'd have to get the council's consent, obviously, to if we're going to shift 80 to 100 to the side, then that would be a decision for the council. It's your capital program, so we couldn't just do that arbitrarily.
Thank you, Mr CEO. I suppose my next question in relation to that was, were there any other future plans already in the embryonic stage for that particular area of the car park next to the Yeppoon Town Hall and Fig Tree Gallery?
Mr Chairman, embryonic, absolutely. I think this group and ones that have preceded it have talked about developments adjacent to the town hall that would ultimately end up with the demolition of that premises, but none of that's been advanced beyond the embryonic stages, as you say, and I guess whilst the former postmaster was living in the place, it really didn't get considered attention. Those circumstances have changed now.
All right. So, Councillor Bello, you're moving this clearly?
Yes,
Can I
thank you,
get a
Mr
second
Chair.
vote, please, for this one?
Oh, I'll second this one, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Chair, councillors. Look, I acknowledge that perhaps if there's a better use for that site, or there is a master plan that we may see come to fruition, that this house will probably not be there. But I've been here for 10 years now at this council, and I've seen a lot of projects kicked around over the years, and I'm not overly confident that we're going to see the development of that site in the very near future at all. But I do look at that dwelling there and taking into consideration the housing crisis. I feel that even if it was $100,000 to actually have a functioning residential home that could be made available to a family or whoever would be suitable to go in there, would be a good outcome. It could be subsidised rent that the council chooses to do, or they could at full market rent, whatever the case may be. But the cost of building a new home similar to that would be upwards of probably $600,000 to $700,000. So if you could fix that house up, and who knows, maybe get another 10 years out of it until you did develop that site, or even longer, well, you provided a wonderful home for someone centrally located in Yeppoon, and if it was subsidised, well, even better. So I don't like to see it sitting there deteriorating. And if it is $80,000 to bring it back, well, that would be one of the cheapest houses that you'd see made available back into the market in central Queensland. And I think it's something that that would be received by the community, unless we had a pressing plan there that clearly was going to see that that building was not worth investing in. But in the absence of that, rather than to do nothing, I'd rather do something. Thank you.
Mr Mayor, I have a question.
Councillor Friend.
In relation to the house, the former postmaster was well known in the community. He's a lovely, lovely man, lived there for many decades, and also with his family at the time. However, is it just this year that he's vacated the property? So it's reasonably fresh that he's vacated the property. It hasn't been vacated for a number of years. It's just recently been vacated. Is that right?
I think it was earlier this calendar year. Councillor Friend, Mr O'Sullivan, I believe so. I might be corrected. If it's something other, we'll let you know.
Yes, okay. So in saying that, I imagine that council officers haven't had an opportunity to look at any master planning for that particular area and what they could do. Is that correct? Hasn't been the time?
Mr Chairman, we haven't advanced any planning for that site beyond the embryonic stages that, as you described them. We had a session with councillors 12 months ago on what some of the prospects might be, but it's not particularly advanced, no.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
All right. So we've got to move. Councillor Valley. Anyone speaking against?
Question, Mr Mayor, is it a freehold, council title freehold?
Yes.
How much land is involved? Is it just a little house block?
Can't answer that.
Mr Mayor, I don't know the exact land tenure of the residents as opposed to the balance. I think they're all on the same title, but we can confirm that for councillors. If you needed that for determining this motion, then we can get that for you shortly. Otherwise, we'll just get it to you offline.
I think it's a very valuable piece of land, and if the house were to be, shall I use the word, brought up to a safety standard, it would be more valuable and useful.
Well, Councillor, you finished, Councillor Fred?
Yes, Mr. I wouldn't like to see this get lost. I know what the intent is, according to this. And I wouldn't like to see it roll over, because we're going to run into caretaker period and it's going to be lost forever. I wouldn't like to see this get lost, because I think we can work on this and work something out in relation to its future, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Eastwood?
Well, if no one's speaking against it, Mr Mayor, I'll speak for it.
Well, actually, I was going to speak against, not because I necessarily don't support this notion, but I would foreshadow a motion, Councillor Bello, that I'd like to take up the suggestion before that this be put into the 23-24 budget for consideration, because by that time we'll have a new council sworn in. We will have perhaps a new council who is planning to do something with that site, or alternatively a council that's happy to renovate that house and make it a livable standard. So I won't support this particular motion in its current form, but I certainly support the intent, and I would suggest and foreshadow that it be put into the budget for consideration in the next budget. Councillor Eastwood.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Look, $80,000 to $100,000 is negligible in this day and age to bring a house up to scratch. And when you consider, even at a small rental of $500 a week, you are going to be bringing in, $26,000 odd a year. So it's not going to be just a giveaway. you would pay that back within 4 years. So it's not, it could actually be made into a good asset for council. What are the alternatives? What sits there, it's squatters in it, it gets vandalised, gets wrecked, people break into it. To me, it's a no-brainer. We've got a housing crisis. Here's a house. Let's fix it up and put it on the market and find a tenant.
Thanks, Councillor Eastwood. Anyone speaking against? All right. No, anyone else want to speak before I go back to Councillor Bello to wrap up? Councillor Friend?
Yeah, I'll just speak against this particular motion, although I do like the idea of a consideration in the next budget and also options for that particular site. I'd like to basically say that this council, and this is on record for the public, has already addressed the rental and housing crisis by partnering with Anglicare and St Vincent de Paul, which was passed by resolution with a majority vote. Fortunately, it was not unanimous. Councillor Bello, this notice of motion is so well intentioned and you're very kind-hearted. We all want to see more accommodation, which is what we're hoping for with the progress of St Vincent de Paul and also Anglicare in Emu Park. Had it not been that the house does not comply with the minimum housing standards and it was ready to move into, then certainly I would have second thoughts about this. But I do like the idea of the foreshadowed motion. So in that case, I'm speaking against this particular one.
Thank you, Councillor Friend. Anyone else like to comment before I go back to Councillor Bello to wrap up? Pardon me. Councillor Bello.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Picking up on Councillor Eastwood's points in terms of the financial returns it could deliver, and also it could have the option of just being a residential property for council staff who perhaps come to town to take a job with council and there's no house for them to move into in the short term. So it has a number of benefits to it. In terms of that, as Councillor Friend said, we have already addressed the housing crisis. I think we can do a little bit more. It's not a start-stop. It's not that's as much as we're going to do. I think we'll constantly be looking for opportunities to contribute towards housing relief, and this is a small step towards that. So I look forward to your support, councillors. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Bello. All right, we'll wrap up debate.
Just quickly, this motion
Debate.
here, the recommendation for Councillor Bello, does not cut across what you're intending to do with your proposed motion. It just places it in the hands. They go together. They may not be word for word perfect, but they do go together.
All right,
So if we support this, it doesn't say we can't support yours as well.
Yeah, I think there's a slight difference, Councillor Mather. Anyway, we'll deal with Councillor Bellows first. We're going to move at Councillor Bello, seconded Councillor Eastwood. All in favour? Those against? Motion is lost. So the foreshadowed motion then becomes the motion. Lucy, do you want me to go through that again? Essentially, that in order, we can just use Councillor Bellows' wording if he doesn't mind. You don't mind, Councillor Bellow? Okay.
So do you want me to just copy that and then
Yep.
write it down?
So within and we'll just copy that to start with. So that in order to assist with the housing crisis, council delegate to the CEO to arrange for the residential council dwelling adjacent to the town hall, or renovate to arrange for renovations to the residential council owned or council dwelling adjacent to the town hall be considered within the 23-20.
The residential council dwelling adjacent to the town hall to arrange for renovations. So you want that repeated again?
No, thanks, no.
So don't repeat it?
No.
Finish that for the renovation?
Yeah, so, sorry, I need to put my glasses on. That in order to assist with the housing crisis, council delegate to the CEO to arrange for the residential council dwelling adjacent to the town hall. CO2, in order to assist with the housing crisis, council delegates to the CEO to arrange renovations. Arrange renovations for the residential council dwelling adjacent to the town hall be considered within the 23-24 budget. Does that make sense? 24-5, sorry, my mistake, yep. So how does that read? That in order to assist with the housing crisis, council delegate to the CEO authority to arrange renovations. No, that doesn't read properly. That in order to, yeah.
The delegation be given to the CEO.
I can interpret that.
Can you? All right. Very poorly worded on my part. Okay, so delegate to the CEO authority to arrange renovations, to arrange the renovations, sorry, for the residential council-owned dwelling or council dwelling adjacent to town hall be considered within the 24-25 budget. You can understand that gobbledygook from me? Right, all right. Apologies for the poor wording, but our brains get tired. All right. Can I get a seconder for that one then, please? Councillor Swadling, thank you. All right. Not really sure we need to debate that much more, councillors, so just happy to go to the vote on this one. All right. All in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. 10-8. Right. Now, Councillor Bello, we're up to 10-8, which is your notice of motion about cash at the landfill. Given the previous motion was adopted from Councillor Friend, did you still want to pursue with this one?
I'd like passionately to pursue this one, Mr Chair.
Righto. As soon as I get past the building report for...
Well, I'll do it very briefly, Mr Chair.
Thank you, appreciate that. Goodness me. There we go. All right, so a recommendation from Councillor Bello that in order to demonstrate Council's commitment to be the model community service provider, Council reinstate cash payment options to waste transfer stations at Yeppoon and Emu Park. Now, Mr CEO, if this one gets up, well, what happens with the former one from Councillor Friend then?
Mr Chairman, I guess I've provided advice in the past that council's not precluded from passing subsequent resolutions that might usurp an earlier one. I've provided that response. I think there's been a few questions about the use of rescission motions and the like, and my response has been consistently that the council can change its mind.
Yep.
So if this motion was to get up and usurp the earlier one, then this would trump that, and we'd proceed that way.
Just wanted to make that clear for everybody. Thank you. All right. Yes.
Is there any reason why both parties weren't told about each other and sort of come together with a solution so there's one notice of motion instead of having two separate ones? Because they're very similar.
Don't know if there's an answer to that one, Councillor Watson. All right, so you're moving, Councillor Bello?
Yeah, the only thing, Mr Chair, is probably in my ignorance, I've nominated Yeppoon and Emu Park. Well, in actual fact, it should be ultimately any of those ones that previously had cash. So my knowledge of those is limited, but if that would include the caves, because I think I heard that come up before, well, I would request that the caves be included in that, or whatever those other waste transfer stations that had that facility.
Could you just stop it at waste transfer stations?
Yep, that would be much appreciated.
Thank you. Moving. Is there a seconder for this one?
Yes, I'll second that.
Oh.
Okay.
All right, Councillor
Well, it
Bello.
looks like I've got a seconder, so in the absence of any questions. Councillors, for me it's pretty straightforward, and I recognise that there is a current resolution that talks about surveying and community engagement, that sort of activity. For me, I'm probably moved well past that. I believe that there's been enough engagement back from the community to give me the confidence to present this for consideration, because I believe it's reflective of truly being the model service provider which we aspire to be. And I take those words from the CEO, who has often reminded me that we are the model litigant. For example, in legal matters, we would do everything we could to ensure that that we do not withhold information, we provide more information than we have to. And likewise, we are the model service provider. Clearly, there will be a changeover in time with cash as we move into a different economy, a digital economy perhaps. Who knows how long that will take. But we certainly have a fairly large generation that are comfortable and often use cash. And they find it difficult to make that transaction that's been virtually thrust upon them. There are other reasons why only digital payment at the landfill is not working really well. And some of those that I've heard is that at times the digital network is down, and you'll have people turn up there that their phone they can't pay with. I've heard anecdotally sometimes that will either mean, I'm sorry, you've got to go and come back tomorrow, or the next day will come back when you've got the ability to pay, when the network's up. Or I've heard that they say just go through because they don't want to deal with the conflict. Now, I'm not making any or drawing any aspersions on the staff out there. I think they do a very difficult job in those circumstances where you've got people lined up and they can't pay because the Optus network's not working or there's a black spot. There's a lot of pressure there at that landfill, and that's been manifest over the last 12 months. I don't think that reflects the model service provider. We have the ability to do it. I believe we should do it. And that's why I'm prepared to move this, not after we go and survey and engage. I think our community is a little bit over surveying and engagement. We've seen that with reducing numbers in quite a few of those areas. And I believe the time to reintroduce cash to those transfer stations to provide that level of service that a council should be aspiring to do. We're not a multi-corporation or a big bank that it is underpinned primarily by profits, although financial sustainability is critical, but we are underpinned by being the model service provider. So I'll reserve my right to wrap up. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any other Councillor Friend?
Questions?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Bello. Couple of questions. First one, you mentioned in your background, Councillor Bello, that, by the way, I like the slogan, don't bin cash. That is a great slogan. However, I agree that council should be a model service provider, which we should be, but we are, once again, certainly not multinationals or big business that are profit-driven. These companies usually enter the stock exchange and create dividends for their shareholders. However, councils' shareholders are our ratepayers. And because you've mentioned this, I just want to ask you this point, because as you know, they are our ratepayers because your portfolio is fees and charges and revenue, and you've had this portfolio for the last 4 years. So I just want to know, how do you, likening model service providers to multinationals, what's our fees and charges got to do with our service-driven values?
You'd like me to answer that question?
Yeah.
So what actually is the question? Please help me understand.
Sure. So you've likened, you're saying that council is not multinational. You're saying that we should be a model service provider. I agree with you on that point. But when you bring in multinationals and big business, what has a profit-driven got to do with fees and charges within our own council? What's that particular point you're trying to make?
Well, thank you. I'll endeavour to answer the question. The decision to remove cash from the waste transfer stations reduces the level of service that some of our ratepayers rely on. Therefore, I'm of the opinion that we should go above and beyond to reintroduce that service so that those ratepayers who struggle and grapple with that are not impacted by that in a negative way. That's my point.
Thank you. Thank you for answering that. Good answer. My next question, I suppose, would be to the waste officer. In the time since September that the those transfer stations have been cashless, are you aware or have you noted any disruption to the digital network within that time?
Through the chair, I mean, obviously with the Optus outage the other week, there was an outage there. We do have also, on occasion, limited coverage on some of the more remote areas. But, you know, council is working through those issues and ensuring there's Wi-Fi out there. Around the Caves area, I think is one, and Emu Park's a little bit marginal on some occasions, but council working through those problems.
Thank you. The previous notice of motion in relation to a report, we spoke quite a lot about the survey that Outlook are undertaking. You know, priding ourselves on engagement, and you previously said that should be back in your hands with the data and information by early December. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So I suppose my next question is to Councillor Bello, because you've certainly been very vocal and noted in the past to value very highly community engagement and consultation. I've previously said that as the waste portfolio holder, I've received 2 emails from people in the Caves area, and their point of view is certainly valid, and I've taken that on board, but only 2. So what I'm going to ask you is, were you aware that this survey by Outlook was taking place before you placed this notice of motion?
I feel like I'm on the stand here. Was I aware that Outlook was going to do a survey about this? No.
No.
And if somewhere in my emails it's there, or somewhere I've read it, or somebody's told me and I've forgotten it, I'll stand here and say, to the best of my knowledge, I'm not aware of what Outlook's doing.
Sure.
Yeah.
I suppose, Mr. Mayor, I'm not against cash. I use cash. I understand a lot of elderly. I agree with Councillor Bello on this point, that a lot of elderly people do use cash, and that people have been in awkward positions because they haven't been aware that the landfill is now cashless, or the transfer stations. So I suppose I have another question to the officer. Is there more definitive signage planned for the future in relation to cashless?
As opposed to what signage is there at the moment?
Yeah.
There's no plans to do any further work around that area.
Right. So, Mr. Mayor, I'm really interested to see, I don't want to put people out over the Christmas period, over the shutdown. I'm not against Councillor Bello's notice of motion at all. However, I would like to see what the survey says, so I'm making a procedural motion, exactly like my previous procedural motion from 10.2, to lay this on the table, the results of the survey undertaken by Outlook, and to be lifted from the table at the ordinary meeting 19th of December.
You might want to slow that down a bit for Lucy, please.
I'll just copy what you had for your other one, if that's what you want, Councillor Brown, pretty much. Yeah. Okay.
My aim is not to make it more difficult, but to find out definitively. I'm unsure if and I ask other councillors here, so it's a question, you know, have you all been notified? Have people been contacting you? Is it definitive that this is causing such a huge commotion, or is it a small group of people? I'm not against bringing cash back if the majority want it. I'm just wanting to see what the survey says.
All right, so you're right with that one, Lucy? So pursuant to section 218 1D and 218, I can't even see that, 11 of Livingstone Shire Council's meeting procedures policy, the matter lay on the table pending the results of the survey undertaken by Outlook, and to return to the council meeting on
The 19th of
December?
2023.
All right. So we've got a procedural motion from Councillor Friend. Any questions on that before we go to the vote?
Hang on, don't we do the resolution first?
Well, yeah, but I'm just giving you the opportunity to clarify anything you're unclear on. All right, so procedural motion from Councillor Friend. All in favour? Those against?
I abstained, Mr Mayor, I'm just practising from somebody else.
Okay. Right, so that's a no as well. All right, so it's carried. Thank you.
Good job. Thank you.
10.9, notice of motion from Councillor Bello in relation to the internal staff survey results.
What was the outcome of my motion?
This one's the last one?
Yeah.
Carried, 4-3.
I thought that was, we weren't voting on the procedural.
We're voting on the procedural motion, yeah.
But did we go back to the actual motion itself?
Well, the procedural motion trumped it.
Oh, it won, did it?
Yes, it did,
Sorry,
yeah.
I thought it lost.
Yeah, no.
My mistake.
Yeah, I was looking at this one.
All right, so the recommendation from Councillor Bello is that Council request the CEO to provide insights into the latest internal staff survey results, which reveal low response 60% and low confidence in the executive leadership team 52%. All right, so you're moving that, Councillor Bello.
Yes, I am, Mr. Chair, thank you.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Mather. Okay, Councillor Bello, you want to speak to your motion?
Yeah, I would appreciate insights from the CEO in response to the latest data that's come through the internal staff survey. I know that we do get the ability at times to discuss these at briefing sessions or what have you, but I believe in the interest of transparency and accountability, I feel it's necessary to bring it to the table here. I am concerned about those results. 60% is a low number. I believe it's the lowest number to date. 60% of the 400 staff or thereabouts, and 52% is a concern to me. And as a member of this board, I believe it's something that we should take very seriously and endeavour to try and identify where those issues are and ultimately how we can turn things around. I want to be assured that every effort has been made to drill into that deeply and to really understand where is the culture at the moment. Because they are not good figures, and I don't think anybody would dispute that, but it's ultimately why are they like that? What's the cause of that? So I'm not pointing fingers at anybody, but I am concerned about the feedback from that latest survey. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Any questions of Councillor Bello?
Just an observation, Mr Mayor, that a number of staff, outside staff, I'm talking here, did not respond because they felt having to respond via a phone or an email did not give them the confidentiality that they were looking for. They were willing to give comment, but they had no sense of security that their comments were going to be private. So that could account by the way we
can
did
we
it.
ask the manager of HR to join us at the table, please? And while we're waiting for Christy to join us, councillors, I'll just make the observation that in the executive leadership team cohort also includes councillors, and I'm welcoming obviously any investigation into our performance and our behaviour as well. Christy, would you mind if you're able to respond to Councillor Mather?
Certainly, thank you for the question and through the chair. In regards to the survey that was conducted this year, Councillor Mather, there was a change in terms of how we were undertaking surveys, in particular with some of our outdoor staff. Last year we had done 62 paper-based surveys, and over the last couple of years we have been gradually trying to reduce that amount. So this year it was around looking at those surveys being completed via an SMS function. So we have done that in the past. We had done an enterprise bargaining through that voting system as well, and had received a very good take up in regards to that. This year it was about trying to see whether we could continue to go down that path and get those surveys, should anyone want to complete them, via their email or via the SMS message. So when we actually look at the response rate itself, yes, it is lower than what it has been in the previous year. When we look at the figures, then yes, potentially, I would say that the lower response rate was largely attributed to potentially the SMS surveys not being completed by our outdoor workforce. So that's something that we would take into consideration for any future surveys, so that we can understand what that looks like for us.
And one that stood out, one comment that sort of popped up from time to time, just talking, not on paper. What's the use? Nobody takes any notice of us anyway. And I think they're kind of like, oh, here we go again. Nobody listens, so we won't bother. And that could be added into that.
Councillor Mather, can I just, and Christy, if I can make a comment there too. And I really hate saying this, but in the 25 plus years I've been in local government, every staff survey I've had that comment come through. I've seen that comment come through. It is a generic comment generally made by someone who's disgruntled.
Well, perhaps it's something that's consistent with local government throughout.
Possibly.
To have it through life. I mean, there'll be people who love their job, and there'll be people who say, yeah, I go to work, it's all right.
Yeah.
And then you've got the others who try.
And Councillor Mather, from my experience, who have worked both in local government and outside of local government, is that is something that will sometimes be a theme that will come through your engagement surveys. The important thing is to look as to where those comments are coming from, and trying to delve into and understand why that might be. Exactly. And if you are actually starting to see more and more of those comments coming through, that's when you start to raise some further concerns. If you see those comments that are being made, but there's potentially less of them coming through in your commentary, that in itself is telling too.
Have you thought, I don't want to take anybody else's space, have you thought about collecting those negative ones and having a group like you would in a town hall? So, okay, we've got some comments that we need to work through. If you can shed some light on those and tell us how we can change it, we're willing to try. We're willing to pick up the ball and see how we can go.
Yeah.
And see if they can take it from there.
Yeah, and thank you again for the question, Councillor Mather. So what we do as part of these engagement survey results is that we actually go and debrief it amongst all of our teams. So for instance, we have spent some time as a leadership team, and now we are spending time with our leaders in terms of helping to understand what those results are. Because even though there might be some general themes across council, it's actually starting to pinpoint where some of those might be. So what's working well in some areas and what may not be working well in other areas. So, and the other thing is that if people are actually spending the time, the 10 minutes to actually complete the survey, it's important for us to, one, share those results, and that's why through the CEO's communication shortly after survey closing, we actually are open and transparent and share those results with our organisation, and then spend the time, each of those leaders debriefing their teams, and then coming together and talking about what are those things that we are going to do differently in terms of starting to make some improvements in some of those areas, or continue to do well in these areas as well.
Had you ever...
Councillor Mather, I've got a question from Councillor
Sorry.
Watson and Councillor... You're right, Councillor Friend, sorry.
Yes, thank you. Thanks, Christy. So I understand that councillors have a meeting in relation to this very thing on the 27th, Monday
Yes.
the 27th. So Councillor Bello has brought this to the table today. just looking at the emails through the ELT and also councillors, it says that it's called an internal survey, and that includes comments from staff in an anonymous fashion, and this survey is confidential. So having broadcast this survey, is there any thing wrong with putting that information into the public, or is it just the survey that's confidential? As the email says, this should be treated with sensitivity.
Yeah, so certainly, thank you again for the question, Councillor Friend. So in terms of the survey, look, it's really important, I suppose, that there is a level of confidentiality that happens with the survey, because we're actually wanting our employees to complete the survey so we can actually get information in terms of what their experience is like working at council. In terms of the information and completing the survey, even in terms of Councillor Mather's questions, it is de-identified. We cannot actually identify who completed the questionnaire, or sorry, the survey, and what those results are. We can only aggregate those to a certain level. We do need to be very mindful in terms of, yes, there is sensitive information within that, because that is something that our employees have completed in terms of giving us information around what their experience is like here at council. So I would also be mindful in terms of how that information is publicly shared, and that if it is shared, it's shared in the context as to what was already been shared within the organisation.
Certainly. Now, without going into detail in relation to the survey, this particular notice of motion concentrates on a very negative side of things, 60% and low confidence in the executive leadership team. By reading it, and once again without going into detail, I saw a great amount of positives in there as well, that people were happy with the staff, were happy working here, a great workplace, many comments that were quite positive. Overall, what would you say would be some of the most positive things that have come out of this survey?
Yeah, certainly. Again, thank you for the question, Councillor Friend. I think one of the things is that over the last couple of years with our engagement survey results, senior leadership or the executive leadership team has been on one of the lower drivers. It is something that we have been working towards. There have been a number of things that we have undertaken since that survey was results of last year, and it's really positive to actually see that that has started to be reflected within the commentary by our people. So our people are actually seeing that. Some of that was about being more visible as an executive leadership team. It was also about helping to create greater communication across our organisation. So even though that there may have been information coming down, if there was any potential areas where that was not filtering through, what are some other ways that we can do that? So from a feedback point of view, we'd actually seen that there was some recognition around the introduction of the CEO TV. So that has been something that we have kicked in over the last 12 months. We have also introduced an ELT extra section within this, the e-bulletin as well. So information that's provided across each of the different portfolios that's shared with all of the organisation as well, and creates conversations at other team meetings.
Certainly. I've read through the comments, both good, and there were negatives, and there was some really useful critiques that can help council improve as well.
Exactly.
And they're important to have. But I've read through, and I like what Mr. Mayor said earlier in relation to the ELT. It's not just that, it's the councillors also. And I urge all of my fellow councillors at the table to read the comments, because there's quite a number of them that do not place councillors in a good light. And I think that's important, that we also understand the issues that the staff perhaps have with the company directors, so to speak. And so other than that, thank you very much for answering those questions.
Thank you, Councillor Friend. And I think that even in terms of the senior leadership, you know, it is 52%, but when we look at that in comparison to the previous year, it is actually an 8% increase. So again, it's positive in the knowing that the efforts that we have been making to actually help to try to improve that is reflected. Would we like that to be more? Yes. But there has been a step in the right direction.
Thank you. Councillor Mather.
Just very quickly, Christy, when you have your wash-ups, your post-mortems, debriefings, do they respond to if you raised a comment that was in the survey and you put it back to the room and say, can somebody please explain this, what do they mean by that? Do they respond in that way?
I can only comment in regards to my experience that I have with debriefs. And yes, certainly in terms of those, is that we look at what that response was, and the team are very willing to share, well, why they think that is, and what are the things that we can do.
Because what I'm thinking, if they're holding back on saying, oh, what's the use, if that is the case, have we thought about having somebody neutral in that position to draw them out?
We have even done it on previous occasions where the manager would be removed and the next level manager would actually be involved in those conversations.
I'm talking about take away the managers. If there was somebody there who was very au fait in doing that sort of negotiating, if that's the word.
Yeah.
Having somebody altogether neutral. They don't know, they're not judging him, he's not judging them.
Councillors, we're getting into a lot of detail about the process around this.
Leave it open up, Mr Mayor.
Yeah, so
That's all right.
ultimately, I just wanted to, given the hour, if we can wrap this one up, because it's 6:15, councillors, and I'm conscious that some councillors have to get away. So whatever we don't get done after this one will have to be deferred until the morning. It was probably a bit ambitious thinking we'd get 15 done within 3 hours, but...
We did all right, Mr Mayor.
Sorry?
We did all right.
So we've got about another 4 or 5 to go.
That's right.
And before we hit the main agenda. Okay, so council, is everyone happy just to go to the vote on this one? Any more commentary around this? All right, so we've got a move of Councillor Bello, seconded by Councillor Mather, I believe. All in favour? Those against? Carried. Thank you. All right, councillors, thank you, Christy, and thank you to our officers for staying back. Mr CEO, thank you. And councillors, we'll close the meeting. I'll move
Adjourn the meeting.
Adjourn the meeting until tomorrow, beg your pardon. Procedural motion, all in favour? Thank you. And that we'll see you in the morning at 8 o'clock. We've got a briefing from our agribusiness consultants tomorrow at 8 o'clock. Thanks, Carl.